We will call the meeting to order. It's, according to most clocks in the world, 2 minutes past 7. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to ask the secretary to do a roll call of who's here.
Jeff Karen,
Present.
Jay Edwards,
Here.
Tom Haley,
Here.
Ruth Hollenbach,
Present.
Deborah Janik,
Present.
Jennifer Jocelyn,
Present.
Justin LaCroix,
Present.
Brendan McNally,
Present.
Jennifer Rashley,
Present.
Joe Souza,
Present.
Sherry Ockery, present.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is public comment, item number 4. I would ask if anybody in the audience has public comment on the items on the agenda tonight that are on the agenda. You're welcome to have come to the podium and state your name and speak on these items. Any public comment tonight on any of the items on the agenda? Going once? Going twice? Okay, I will close that item out. And I will move on to item number 5, opening remarks. I put this item on this week just to just so I had a place to just have a small discussion before we moved on to substance. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge a couple of things. I'm glad I put it on because I have a couple of things to acknowledge. I have a transmittal here, a letter dated March 14, which is today. It is addressed to Jeff Karen, the chair of the Tiverton Budget Committee, and it is from I'm sure it's from Jan, our town administrator. Yes, it is, with copies to the council, the clerk, the treasurer, and the superintendent. And it says, "Dear Chairman Karen, in accordance with 301A8 of the town charter, I am formally transmitting the final municipal budget request as well as the final revenue estimates for fiscal year 1920 FY20 as approved by the town council and transmitted to him on March 6th. So this is the formal, clean submittal, and I looked at it. It's printed out in color. It's very nice. So this is what we were, of course, very fortunate to receive the next day, the same exact set of numbers as an advance copy, which has allowed us to, not lose a week, which is great. And as I've told the administrator and said a few times that I know years we had to wait 10 days for that. So this is fantastic that we were able to get it in advance. There was a pending charter change just to solve that issue. So thank you for making it so simple and working together. I also have here and I will of course provide this to the secretary for the official. We can PDF that and make it all real, and you can put it in the official binder and whatnot. Okay. I also have here the minutes that are of the town council dated for the Monday, 4th day of March meeting. It was a special council meeting, and these were approved on March 11th, which I believe was this past probably Monday council meeting. That was probably the regular meeting. And these minutes appear to be, open session, discussion and votes on the fiscal year 1920 budget, discussion and votes on fiscal year revenue estimates, and discussion and possible votes on resolutions for vote at the FDR. So these are the minutes that I believe the town clerk referenced, and when we started asking questions, you remember at some point in a meeting or two ago, I remember we were talking about maybe it was the night that President Coulter was here, but remember we were talking about three different motions, and they all died 3-3. I don't know if you were here that night, but anyway, that led to some discussion. So I think this is the set of minutes that will show, you know, that shows that, I believe. Go ahead. Yes?
Just for the record, I think those minutes continue to the meeting that was also continued to the 6th of March. I think President Colbert explained that last year.
Okay.
So one set of minutes because the meeting was continued.
All right, we went to Wednesday night. So is this cover 2 nights?
Yes.
Okay, so this is the full set of minutes, covers 2 nights. It was approved apparently 3 nights ago. And, but anyway, for the details, and this kind of shows the, if I could in quotes, the drama that went on. Okay? So, and that's nice because that backs up the transmittal that we received.
And
Wonderful.
I just asked you, that transmittal, because we received this letter, we did not get an attachment. It's
Oh.
what we received last week, Tuesday night.
The attachment is, the attachment that I have here, I believe, is, I will show you what it is.
Not the
It is
Tuesday,
the
it's the March 6 numbers.
Tiverton General Fund Budget FY '20. It says March 6th, Tiverton Town Council Final. It says Tiverton Council Final on it?
Yeah.
Does yours say Final on it?
It was,
Not what I had the other night.
Okay, and it's very clean, it's got color, and, okay, it's clean, it's got color. That being said, I know that Jan has testified that the numbers
you
are the
do,
same.
yeah, it
This
was,
is from last Thursday.
right. yeah,
Right,
last
right,
Thursday.
right,
Okay.
right. So, yeah, and so, it's that same document, yeah. Okay, so it's just a really clean copy.
But Jan, are they exactly the same? So we were given a March 6th copy that doesn't have the color.
The color is strong because it was Xerox, I assume.
Um,
It is exactly the identical document that was distributed in your last Thursday's.
Okay, thank you very much.
yeah.
Okay, what was your question?
No, in the box, I wondered
And
if
if
Bill,
anyone
I think I
needs
had.
additional copies, we can make them.
Okay, so the attachment is just a lovely color copy of that document.
I could
Okay.
use a copy.
Which we will put in the binder. Okay, so, wonderful. And,
And I'm sorry, just for clarification. So are these March 12 documents of the budget copies of the March 6th?
no, those are budget committee documents, I believe. Those are different.
Yeah,
Those are very different.
Okay, thank you kindly.
I don't think they're all that different, but they are different documents.
Thank you.
Okay, so we all good on the receipt of the documents?
Yes.
Okay. Now, we are also, I would think, awaiting, and we may receive tonight, a formal transmittal from the school department, as well as, unless it's in here, a formal transmittal from the treasurer and the town clerk.
If I may.
Yes.
In my letter, I
Okay, does it address that?
explained that the document includes the numbers for both the town clerk
Great.
and the town treasurer budgets. We have coordinated those pretty closely, and I'm confident that those are the final numbers for them. I checked with the treasurer, he was not necessarily planning to do a separate transmittal. If you would like it,
No.
I'm sure we can make it happen. But
I'm fine.
for those two, you can use that document. Obviously, the numbers that are in there for the school department are not the
Okay.
final request for the school department.
I hadn't read this word for word, so great. Okay, thank you for doing that. Less paper. Great, thank you. And thank you for noting it in the cover letter, so that we know what's going on. Fantastic. Okay, great. So we received the documents. That's a big thing, and hopefully we'll have another document from the school department tonight, school committee tonight. The other thing I wanted to mention in opening remarks was that having received that document, and presumably by Saturday as a deadline, the school committee one, then we kind of enter a new phase for the budget committee in that we are able to review final numbers now. And with that, we'd be able to, per our discussion in the second night, I believe, or third night, to start taking real votes, should we choose. And I think that was our plan. So I wanted to kind of mention that, and for everyone to be aware of that, certainly that was my intention, that I believe moving forward, the agenda, I believe the agenda will no longer say preliminary vote, we'll just put vote. And the intent is that. Now, I suppose if someone makes a motion to have a preliminary, if the motion is for a preliminary, I guess we could do that, but because we're not quite sure, but something, but certainly the word vote will be there. I'm going to remove the word preliminary. Okay, so everyone be aware of what that means. Moving forward. Okay, so that's certainly the intent. So that's just ratchets things up a bit for the next few weeks. And obviously we need to vote all these line items. And as we showed the other night, some of these things go fast and some not so fast, and I thought that was a fast list, so be it. The other thing that I wanted to mention was that I would like to, and I'm just a little bit limited for bandwidth in my time personally, but I would like to have on the agenda for next week, for Tuesday at the opening session, I would very much like to have an opening session that just takes a look at that levy calculation that we touched on, and spend a little bit of time just sort of looking at the boundary conditions of it, like just sort of, okay, so, this is what a capital budget of, the maximum capital budget is, and this is what no capital budget does, and just to get some range of, okay, this is kind of the world we're in, it does cross to a tax increase, or it doesn't, and just to get some idea of where we're at before we start taking real votes. I think it's appropriate before starting real votes to just understand, like, kind of where the council's put us, sort of, and where the school committee's put us, and then, just so everyone has a gut instinct of where we go. So that's going to require some time on my part to, and probably Tom's part, to sort of, to just generate a few what-if scenarios so that we can come, with them and put them on the graph. So I would like to do that, and I know that was one of the reasons I wanted the opening remarks, just to say that. And what I've been struggling a little bit with too is what items to put on the agenda for the first night, and I've just been too bandwidth limited to make that progress. But I do need to post this agenda tomorrow, so that is obviously going to have to happen. So I will come to grips with that at some point in the next 20 hours. Or even sooner than that, 15 hours. So, all that being said, I think that, does anyone else have any opening remarks or anything they want us to discuss?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, in the past, we haven't started voting on items until we've received this information, and knowing that we wouldn't have gotten it until the 15th, it was due the 15th, I scheduled a personal trip next Tuesday, and I'd prefer to start voting on these regular things. I'd rather not have a meeting next Tuesday. Because based on the schedule that we typically have, the first meeting we would normally plan would be after we receive this documents, which the last date would have been Saturday or tomorrow, 15th? 15th or the 16th. And then the first meeting that we would typically have to begin voting would be the next Thursday. So if we can begin next Thursday, that would be my preference. But continue to go over each item with preliminary votes until then.
Okay, so I just will say right off the bat that our regular schedule has these meetings listed on Tuesdays. I think that it's important that people certainly are able to be present for these. And on the flip side, I wouldn't want to have a vote where someone who knows they won't be here is in that situation. So I have, and it's actually less pressure on me to get this agenda posted if it's a preliminary night and not a final night, personally. But I don't have a problem with making it preliminary, and we can really hash the stuff out. I mean, it was, we saw, like, we really went through stuff the other night. I mean, we really did some work, and so I don't have a problem with it as long as we do work. And,
Well, and to that point, I had another board meeting on Tuesday, so I wasn't able to come when that additional meeting was scheduled. So I would have liked to have attended on Tuesday, but wasn't able to because both of these. And in the past, when we've needed extra time, it's been in the last 2 weeks, not the 2 weeks before.
I understand. I understand. Yeah, I with the addition of all the capital items and the pace that I sensed this committee was moving at in the first couple of weeks, we posted the regular schedule a couple of weeks late. And when I sensed the pace, I posted these meetings because I was concerned about that. And I think that I was probably prudent in doing that and saying that we could, worst case, we wouldn't have to have a Tuesday at the end. So, but I understand in the past what's happened, but I do not want to be in a position where we don't get our work done, or we're here 3 nights in a row. That being said, I have no problem making it a preliminary night, as long as we continue to make progress. I have no problem with that whatsoever. So, that being said, does anybody else, this is a little bit of a change to our regular schedule, it's not that big a deal. Does anyone else have a problem with that? If we continue with preliminary voting for the Tuesday as well? Consensus?
Good for
Okay,
me.
not a problem. Beautiful. Okay, so we will do that by consensus, and not a problem. And like I said, that's actually a little bit less pressure on us to get the agenda posted. Just a little bit less pressure there too to think it all through. So I think that's. I'm glad I put opening remarks on. It allowed us all to do that. And I think that probably any other remarks, or can I move on?
I have a quick question.
Yes.
So we already took some preliminary votes that went really smoothly. So when we go to final vote them, can, the ones that we already have
Yeah.
preliminary done, can we hit those again and see if we can
And
get
hope
them?
that none of
Maybe there is some discussion, but we've already kind of,
Yeah.
a lot of them went very smoothly and with not a lot of discussion. So maybe we could start with them and try, because there was a huge chunk that we kind of
Yeah,
killed.
yeah.
So if we could do that, maybe the first voting night, and see how far we get, we might better be able to look at where we're at.
Mhm.
We know which ones are gonna, some of them, need more information, and other ones are gonna be a lengthy discussion, but maybe we could go back to that and start with that, and
Mhm.
get that section done.
Yeah, just knock those out quickly. And so what, let me ask a question. Will there be draft minutes out there should be minutes, maybe approved minutes by that, like next Tuesday, if not tonight even, I don't know. We may have, the minutes should be published. So for people who weren't at the meeting on last Tuesday, there should be minutes available so they can see, oh, these went all fast, and it should help to move that quickly.
Yeah, the other pointed concern is that now that we're voting on things, it's really important to have the video recording.
Have we, just to her point, have we checked that? Are there other, because typically when we have like a Tuesday meeting, if there is a school committee or if there's some other meeting going on that may take video, have we looked at that schedule to go, they're not gonna be here? We don't have the videographer, or maybe we we should look at it?
I have not. I can, right now, look out to, Andrew, right? Andrew, have you seen what our schedule looks like for the next 3 weeks? Okay. Our schedule is behind you there, and there's no need to look at it because I can simply state it. That for the next 3 weeks, our schedule is a Tuesday, Thursday, unless we get our work done and we don't need the last Tuesday or something. But generally speaking, it's a Tuesday, Thursday. So are you able to support us on that Tuesday? Okay. And it's short term. It's yeah. So that would be great. Okay. Does that satisfy?
Yeah,
me?
thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Anything else?
I just had a quick question on the Recreation Department. He seemed to want to give you some more details, and he was willing to come in, but you probably didn't want him to come in. Just, you can, people were talking about him either coming in or giving him some paper with details. So it's up to the committee what happens there, and up to you. No time for him to come in. Chris Romley.
I have a preference. Was that a conversation you had with him? Like on
We
the
all
site
had a
visit?
conversation at the site visit.
I would prefer, at this point, just because we've got to get shaken, I would prefer that something like that be submitted probably in writing. I mean, just so we can get going, because I mean, the whole goal was to have testimony done.
Did you want me just to?
And I'm not suggesting we won't have any more testimony, but I would prefer, since it's the second bite at the same apple, I would prefer to get it something in writing, or
Right. I can let him know.
that would be preferable. And then if we have questions, we can deal with it. But
Sure.
So we'll
Is that okay?
contact them.
Yeah, I can take that as an action item.
It can even just be an email,
Yeah.
to the secretary, and we can print it out.
Okay.
Okay, doesn't have to be a
I'll email
fancy
you
dancy thing, okay?
With both of them on it. That's fine.
Thank you. Anything else?
So just to follow up on the point with Rec, Mr. Romeline had not presented to us the capital improvement. He didn't touch on capital improvements. He just gave us his regular budget, and so that was the reason to speak to us again.
Yeah, and he has in the capital plan that was submitted to us, there are numbers, and I think what Chris was going to do is give us some sense of priority of what we would be doing in each place and which ones were most critical. They're all in here, and it's a question of what he felt in terms of where things were going, and he has a nice vision for things. So it's not new stuff, it's in here, but it will give more explanation.
Why didn't he touch on that when he was here? Just overlooked?
Just slipped his mind, yeah.
I think we were just
Because
talking
that
about the
darn budget's in two
budgets.
pieces.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we
Yeah.
just talked about budget when he was here, we didn't talk about capital.
Yeah, well,
There's no
you can
discussion
easily
about
slip your mind,
capital,
yeah, I get it.
And in particular, there's one big flag, and that is the main jungle gym at Town Farm has been taken down. It was taken down a couple of weeks ago because it was unsafe. And so one of the main items is to talk about funding that this year.
Okay. Well, I propose that it come in writing. Is the sense of the committee that they'd rather have him come in person? I sense that a couple people would. I'm concerned about time,
I'm
but
just wondering how long that presentation might be. I mean, if we're only really talking about that one, like, we've already talked about the budget side of it. And then we have a lot of question about salaries and things like that. If we're only talking about the equipment replacement, maybe we could block out 20 minutes, 3 minutes. I don't know. What do you
okay.
think about
I mean,
that?
I'm happy to do it. I'll
Or can we submit questions to Ruth and she could forward them and we could get an answer that way? And then if we feel he needs to come.
Right, because if he has those, he said he wanted the priorities to be done sooner and then the longer-term things to be done longer from now, then he can give us that on paper, too. I mean, and I can give questions if you have them, too.
So we have nowhere we have anything capital from them?
No, we do.
have it on the line
We do,
item,
but we
just
didn't talk
have the
about it, and
discussion.
he
It's
didn't
just-
present it.
Okay.
And there are certain things that that he noted were important.
Do you know if they got in, like, do they have what they'd like to purchase? It's all spec'd out? They have a quote?
Yeah.
I mean, the type of
They're
equipment that's
working
there.
on it.
Can I, please?
Yeah, Joe?
Just from past, I believe the council was talking about a group of volunteers that are working on the parks. And they're still working on it. And there aren't any numbers that are presented in this year as far as, like she just said, they're still working on it. Bottom line is, we don't even know cost has been bid. We don't know who would build it. So I haven't heard a plan or anything. So
That's what he was putting together.
Yeah, that's what we asked him about.
who's putting together?
Chris.
Chris
Chris,
Romine.
because
The public, from the recreation?
Chair of the
Right, but
recreation.
what about the group of volunteers that were working? There was several groups that are working on the park, I understood. So,
Working on the what?
working on getting things like funding for stuff like that. I'm just wondering why, seems like last minute stuff is coming up. Oh, no, then what, we're just gonna come up with a number and hope it works?
Well, there's a line.
That's not the way we should be doing things in this town. Besides the fact that it's been, over the years, groups of volunteers that have the kids that went out and helped, like they did at the ramp park over there, the skateboard park.
Right, and Joe, you're
No,
right.
let me
You're
finish,
right,
okay?
You're right.
All right, so now we're just going to, throw a number in the budget and hope it works? No, that's not the way it's supposed to work. What's supposed to happen is the group of volunteers is supposed to organize it first,
Yeah,
all right? So that hasn't even happened yet. You're shooting a gun.
he mentioned all the
But
volunteers. He
town council's
mentioned
got
it.
a capital
You're
line
right.
item.
All right, but it was my understanding they're not ready yet. So now they're going to rush a number?
There is-
And who's going to do the work?
There
We
are
have a
numbers
number
here.
that.
And there are
have-
bids to do the work?
The council.
Or are they going to expect that
Why
the
don't-
Public Works Department is going to do it? These are the questions that need to be answered. We have a stretched-out Public Works Department now. You want to put it on more park work or on the beach, they got a big, long list of the beach. And yet we got roads, they got 20 years' worth of sand packed up along the sides of them, and the roads can't drain because of 20 years' worth of sand packed up along the edges of them. No road maintenance being done. We got a thing at Pond Ridge Road, they want to spend $20,000 out there. You know, it hasn't had maintenance out there in 20 years. The culvert is so full of silt that the water can't go under the road. But we're gonna build a park and let the roads go another year, and that's the problem. Until we see a plan, who's gonna build this thing?
Yeah, and
How much is it gonna cost? Is it gonna last, or are they the type of materials that are gonna last, and are they gonna be safe for children? I mean,
and he said he
years
didn't
to come.
hadn't had time to do that
I
yet.
need to take control of this because I gotta take control of the meeting. This is opening remarks. I don't want to get into an elongated discussion about this. So here's what I'm gonna do, okay? I'm gonna let Mr. Romline come in. I'm gonna allow it, and here's what we're gonna do. For those interested in the conversation, we're gonna start the meeting at 6:30, and I'm gonna put him first on the agenda, and that's what we're gonna do, okay? We're gonna do it that way. And anybody who's interested in that discussion can come early and have the discussion.
Jeff,
I really don't want to.
But it's
I
about
really don't have
this.
time to, I don't have time, to go ahead, Don. One thing, and that's it. I got to really move forward in our agenda tonight.
under capital expenditures on the park and recreation, there's money for Town Farm and the Jungle Gym. And it's been Justin Katz, the Director of Recreation, Chris Romulan, and the Town Administrator that have been meeting periodically. But we needed to get the money in there so that we could get grants and get some bidding, just so you know. And
Yeah,
it was
we know
only,
that.
it was only for that.
Correct, it's on the
And,
capital
and,
side.
and I think $15,000 for maybe some other things that needed to be just adjusted at some of the other parks, that's all, right
But
now.
there's a line item that
Okay.
we're gonna vote on.
I don't, yeah, thank you, Donna.
And it just
Okay.
wasn't heard before.
That's fine. We're going to start at 6:30. And we're going to have to do it that way because
Jeff, is that Tuesday or Thursday?
that's going to be on Tuesday. Thank you. Sorry, but it just, we're going to do it. We got to do it. Okay, next item on the agenda is, let me make a note of that. Next item on the agenda is docket development and discussion and preliminary budget votes for, number one is Police Department. So, I, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66, 67, 68, 69, 70, 71, 72, 73, 74, 75, 76, 77, 78, 79, 80, 81, 82, 83, 84, 85, 86, 87, 88, 89, 90, 91, 92, 93, 94, 95, 96, 97, 98, 99, 100, 101, 102, 103, 104, 105, 106, 107, 108, 109, 110, 111, 112, 113, 114, 115, 116, 117, 118, 119, 120, We can just go right at it. I'll entertain a motion for the police department budget, or I'll entertain discussion. We can do it either way. Of course, there's always discussion as part of a motion in a second, too. I don't know. I gotta
It's
get
on
mine
page
out.
7, page 7.
Would someone be so kind, not necessarily to make a motion, but just read the total that the council, just for the purpose of enlightenment, read the total, who already has their docket out?
For the police?
211,
For the police, Jeff?
$3,411,039, an increase of 3.3%.
No, that's not what I have.
That's not,
I have, no,
683.
Am I looking at
Yeah.
March 6th?
$3,007,083.
No,
Page 7.
that's just, that's a salary piece. So on page 7, it starts with salaries, 3,007,683, and then on page 8, we go to
There's a, you're right, Jay.
mandated, contractual mandated stuff, and then
Oh, the
operations.
3-4 number?
Correct. And so that takes the three categories together as the 3.4
Okay,
million
sorry.
that Jay
Page
just
8.
mentioned.
They were looking at just the salary portion.
Oh, is that all I wanted?
I think you were looking at.
Okay, so, I just wanna see what that,
Yeah, you're right.
so the total, the salary increase appears to be 3.1%. And the contractual mandated expenses appears to be 5.4%. And the operations piece to be 3.3%. Wow. I don't know where the savings were in that contract, frankly, but ridiculous.
Mr. Chair,
Mm-hmm.
the bottom of the memo from the town administrator talks about that there's a change in some of the numbers in the account 330-5101.
3305101. Okay. Just a minute, please.
I have a feeling our administrator, town administrator.
3305101. So that would be 5101, and seems to include salaries, like the first 5 or 8 lines maybe into police salary. Is that what you're saying, Deb?
Yes.
I think it is.
I believe that our town administrator is here to talk to us about that.
Well, I could quickly clarify if
Just-
you would like me
just
to.
If you could, just a minute, because we talk
No,
amongst
I
ourselves.
understand.
Thank you.
So that account number is for the union positions in the police department, the police union positions. And when the council looked at it, when it approved its final budget request, a concern did get raised about, are these the right numbers? Because what the treasurer had projected was somewhat different from what they saw in this budget. So since then, we've looked into it. I need to brief the council on what I have found together with the police chief and the treasurer. And I have the feeling that the council probably will get back to the budget committee with, its advice as to whether, and if so, how the numbers ought to be changed. It's not a huge difference, but there was a difference.
Whatever we want. Thank you.
Can I ask, what's the date on your draft?
Well, I'm looking at the budget committee document dated 12 March.
I'm still on January here. I think I'm missing something.
And it has the percentage increase, which is nice on this one.
12 March?
The town council has also.
That, Sherry, the copies, the extra copies you want to see?
Yeah, that's what I was asking.
Okay.
I've got 6 March.
I'm looking at mine.
so, Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
We
the
haven't got it.
second sections, the general contractual mandated expenses, those are the same. And the operations expenses, those are also the same. So we could vote on those and then wait until the town council weighs in on the first part of the police budget.
Thank you. Could you explain what you mean by the same?
She's making
Yes, on page 8 of the final budget.
Are you looking at, okay, page 8, yep.
General
Did you reference like a
contractual,
line, like police salaries, or which one are you on?
so the section that's labeled general contractual mandated expenses, beginning with 5168.
Mm-hmm.
The end of that section, general contractual mandated expenses totals 191,856. That is the same as we reviewed in our other budgets. So that none of those items have changed since we've discussed it. And the next section under operations, that section also has the same total. So we could talk about those and wait until we get the town council's weigh in on the police department salaries.
Okay, just by point of reference, that's a good point. By point of reference, I believe that the changes have come since the 6th of March.
Correct.
So they're after this was published, the changes. You see what I'm saying? So the changes would be to both columns and to both columns and after this was published.
Isn't only the salary section gonna change and the other?
I don't know,
two-
that's a good question, so
'Cause we could, if
I'm gonna
it's
address
not-
that to the administrator.
Yeah.
I do have a question, Mr. Administrator, if I may. The question I have is, the changes that you referenced when you spoke a minute ago, are they only to the salary block? Or are they only to that one section called salary and not the general contractual or the operations, or are they to all the sections in the police budget?
It's the, as far as I know, the contractual, so the union from salaries for captain through the salaries for the school resource officer. And, no, actually, the number for overtime, I expect to remain the same.
Okay, so, for example, then, the number on the next page, I believe, which would be 191,856 in bold, for general contractual mandated expenses, is that something that isn't, from your knowledge, is in flux?
I really hope that that is not the
Okay,
case.
so that's not, okay, and how about the 211,500?
Same.
Okay, thank you, and so thank you for pointing that out. We could if I think that would be reasonable, yes. So, is everyone clear on that?
Do we wanna break it up into two and vote on each section, or do you wanna do it all at?
Yeah, it's all up to you guys, you're the committee.
Can I ask, do we have the new capital requests from the police department? Is that coming out too?
I would personally prefer to handle all the capital stuff on a different,
Well-
I'm not, I don't know.
I'm still wondering if they voted for 3 cars, and still was trying to, I can't find any information on the battery packs. And the reason I bring that up is those cars are passed down, so if it drops from the front line down to the second line for the details, and the lithium battery goes bad, I'm wondering what's gonna cost it. I mean, hybrids are great, but I'm wondering what happens when that battery.
Yeah, I share your concern.
So, I don't know, they were talking about buying 3 cars in the first year, and if we can't hand those cars down without considerable expense in 5 years,
I,
It's not in the two sections that we're voting on.
well,
Now they're
they,
separate in the capital section.
they could, well, I guess, the way that we've done our addressing of the docket, I guess they could be, but because we always address the capital as part of the budget, right, Brendan? So I guess they could be. However, I think that, I think that what I'd like to do is, because I think one of the reasons that next week on Tuesday, I'd like to spend a few minutes looking at what makes the levy jump around. And I think that this capital budget is one of the things that's going to be a driver. And so I think I'd like to maybe hold off on voting on the capital budget items until we see what type of a forcing function it is on the budget, if that's okay. So I was I hadn't even considered voting on capital, so I just, in my mind, it was just I was just sort of had laser beams on, laser guides on. And
If I
had
could
no-
just briefly.
But I share your concern, I'm happy to.
Yeah, well, I
share
looked,
it.
I read through it's a 100,000-mile, 6-year warranty on the powertrain, 60,000 on everything else, but I couldn't find anything on the battery. So that's a concern, I guess, with a hybrid at the end of their life. So I don't know how we can put a request out to the chief or whoever.
Yeah. Well, so the concern is like, when these cars, after 4 years or whatever, when they get handed off to,
Detail.
or whatever they get
or
handed off to the
yeah,
next
or- yeah,
level.
yeah.
Okay? And they eventually go to the building official, or the tax assessor.
Mm-hmm.
We're used to doing that, and they get handed off, they're worth maybe $8,000 to the town at that point for use, I mean, whatever they're worth.
Yeah.
And they're a good asset, and they save us having to buy that person a car. And so now the question becomes, if this battery is toast after 100,000 miles, then, are we shortchanging ourselves? And that's the question, and that's Joe's question. And I think it's a really good question, I think it's
Can
one
I
we want to
make a
answer.
comment on this?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Just
go
quick.
ahead. Go ahead.
I drive a Prius.
Mm-hmm.
I've had it for 15 years.
Mhm.
It has 300,000 miles on it.
No.
It has the original battery in it. There are taxi cabs in New York that have over 500,000 on the original battery. So assuming then that American cars are using what Toyota does, it's not quite that big a concern.
Okay. It would be interesting to hear from, another department, or if there's anything out there, like,
Yeah. You could do
hand-me-downs.
some due diligence.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
That's just my personal experience, and I've had 3 Priuses, and I've never had a problem with any of them, so. I know, and I understand, we're not buying Priuses.
You drive a lot.
Police department.
200,000 miles. Okay. Anyway, I don't want to, I'd rather save the discussion. I think it's a great point, Joe.
Yeah.
Took some great, we'll get there. I just don't want to go down the rabbit hole right now, if that's okay, Joe, okay?
What?
Okay. So, anyway, if we could, back to the docket budgets. Does anyone want to make a motion for these 2 sections? I mean, that would seem reasonable if somebody wants to. I leave it up to the committee at this point.
I move that we accept the town council's number for the general contractual mandated expenses for our police department, beginning with clothing allowance number 5168, all the way down to state psychological tests number 7199. The total for the contractual mandated expenses is $191,856.
A second?
Okay, we have a motion in a second, so we have a live motion on the floor. Is there any discussion on that motion?
I think this is all contractual mandated expenses, so I think that it's something we need to just approve.
There's no discrepancy.
There's not.
Changes.
Any other discussion? My only comment is the percentage increase, the size of it. Okay, I'll call for a vote then. All those in favor of the motion? Opposed? Okay,
Somebody's got to be opposed.
thank you, Joe.
Too much of an increase.
Yep. Okay, is that a vote recorded? Where's our secretary? go? Okay. So Joe, I'm just gonna make a note right here then. Joe opposed. Sherry not present, right? She abstained, I guess you'd call her, right? Because she wasn't here.
So that's 9-1.
It was 9-1? Okay. Okay, any other motions on police tonight?
I'll do the operations. I'll make a motion to approve operations budget, starting with account number 6648, ending in 7840, for a total of $211,500.
I'll second that.
Okay, and this was Jennifer, made this one, I'm sorry.
Jocelyn?
We approved this, 9-1. Joe voted no, and we had you as an abstention.
Okay, and that was for
This is,
this
we
number
moved
here
to
and this
accept
number
this
here.
one.
Okay.
Jocelyn, Deb seconded.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor for the 211,500, and we have a second on that. So is there any discussion on this motion? This is the operations, 211,500, 3.3% increase in the percentage column. Any discussion?
So Jeff, I know you're hopping on the contractual was 5.4% increase, but when you look at the department as a whole, including salary, the total is 3.3% for the entire department. If that makes it easier for you to swallow.
So that would seem to indicate that the first one was would have to be less than 3.3 from the, we call that the average value theorem from calculus freshman year, right?
Well, the only thing that made the first one go up was there's a $1,500 increase in state qualifications, I believe it is. But other than that, everything else stayed flat.
Thank you, Deb, for pointing that out. I do note that salaries as presented is 3.1%, and of course, that's the biggest number.
So it's
Thank
a
you for
real
noting
big
that. I was in the fog on that. So we have any more discussion on the 211,500? And call for a vote then. I'll call for a vote. I'll call first, of course, for all those in favor. So all those in favor of the 211,500 motion, please raise your hand. Opposed? Abstain? Anyone? Okay. Was that unanimous? I wasn't really.
Yep.
Okay, great. Unanimous. Okay, great. Thank you very much. And I assume that we're going to hold off on voting on the salaries one until maybe we get some clarity. Is that fair?
Yeah, 'cause-
Okay. So maybe we can jump to the fire one for a minute. Where are we here?
It's up on page 6.
Prior, huh? And then we'll get through these two, and then we'll be on to the school. Let's see how this goes. So fire department, I'm looking at the budget committee document, it starts on 7 of 16, but the salaries line, bulk of it really starts on 8, page 8, on the budget committee document. There's a salaries line of 2,280,941. And then there's an operating expenses of 368,104.
I'd make a motion that we approve the fire department request 3310 from the salary, first one starting at 5,100, all the way through their operations on 7840, for a total of $2,649,045.
I'll second that.
Sorry, well, I'm lost at what just happened.
Taking the whole thing, I've
gonna
taken
take
the
it all
salaries and,
Okay.
and the operations together. It's a total of 1.1% increase.
There was a
over-
second on that? Yes. Let me make a note of that. You have that recorded?
Yeah.
Okay, great. I won't bother them. Okay. Um,
So we discussed saying?
I'm gonna, yeah, we can discuss it. Is there any discussion that would like to occur on this?
So we just need to keep in mind that these are the older figures. This does not include the increase for the contract that's not yet settled. So we need to make sure that we have something set aside in the contingency fund for that contract ratification, completion.
Okay. Does anybody else have any discussion on this?
Could I say something? Can we wait?
I recognize.
Oh, I thought, I didn't know.
Can I make an amendment to the motion?
You can.
I'd like to amend that we just vote on the operating expenses.
The bottom one?
Yeah. Page 6, beginning with operating expenses, recruiting process, promotional testing, 6310, through station building maintenance, 7840. And then so my amendment would be then to reserve voting on the salaries until we
won't know.
We won't.
We
That's what
won't.
that was gonna be my question. We may not have
We will
those
not.
numbers by the time we're done because it's in arbitration, so we're not gonna have final numbers.
Mr. Chairman, I withdraw my motion.
Thank you.
Or amendment.
Okay, any more discussion?
I would just, to follow up on what Deb said, the numbers that we're being given is people were pretty confident that those were going to come in that range. However, they're predicting a 1.1 increase. We should maybe, well, they're predicting a 3.1 for salaries. That's probably not a bad estimate. But we could always just say, well, let's assume it's going to be 4 and make sure that there's enough in the contingency fund to support a number like that. We still vote on this, but we need to keep in the back of our minds that it may not quite be this way.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Joe.
I don't know how many of you remember when we went through the fire departments that the insulation in the buildings is pretty much shot, and the roof and the heat is going up. Looking at $15,000 worth of heating oil for 2 stations. I'd like to move some money out of the heat and move it into insulation, move it into building maintenance. In other words, I think we could see direct savings on the heat if we insulated the buildings properly. So the only way I can figure we can get that going is if we put some money into it. And I don't want to increase the line. I'd like to take it away from the heating bill and put it into insulation. I think particularly the station out on Crandall Road, because money was put in the budget 2 years ago to put the roof on and to fix the insulation in that building, and the council never went out to bid So the money rolled back into the general fund. So that 2 years ago, it should have been fixed. So that's 2 winters that the heat is just basically went, that's our tax dollars going up into space.
Okay.
I think I made my point, so I'd like to move that down. I know we already made a motion and it was seconded,
Well,
but,
we can, no, you can make an amendment to the motion. So,
Well-
you can make an amendment, so.
well, I'm not
What would
gonna.
you like to amend?
Well, I'd like to move $2,000
Okay,
from
from
heat
what to what?
into building maintenance.
From what to what?
From heat
From heat,
to fire department building maintenance.
6910 to
7840.
7840.
7840.
How much did you say, Joe?
$2,000.
So that the total's the same.
Yeah, it's not gonna change the bottom line, but it's taking out of the heating fund and putting it into building maintenance. So at least Crandall Road can get, I mean, we could probably save big money out on Crandall Road just by putting the insulation back in the ceiling out in that bay. We got the tankers there, we gotta keep the heat on to keep the tankers from freezing. So it's gotta.
Joe, how do you know it's 2,000 that would be needed?
Well, that's pretty much what was in the budget. I mean, I think $2,000, I think we have a guy now who does in-house there. He might be able to do some of it and then just, get somebody to come in and do the sheet rock.
Okay,
But he's got a lot of work done on the buildings, but he needs to, if we put the money there for the material, they can get the work done, I think.
does Joe have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, Ruth seconded the motion. Okay, is there any further, we got a motion, an amendment, we got a motion and a second. So before we vote on that, is there any discussion on that motion?
Question, Mr. Chairman?
Yes?
Can we stipulate how money is used in maintenance?
Can we stipulate how money is used in maintenance?
As a budget committee, I'm just asking.
I guess, I
it.
mean, I guess we could write like a memorandum or something. I don't know how much force and power it holds, but
Yeah. No, I think speaking with the members of the fire department, they saw the need. I think the chief saw the need, particularly in that building, the finish. It was planned to do it 2 years ago, like I said, and the council just never went out to bid on it as far as the sheet rock part of it. So, it's crazy. So we need to make sure it gets done this year.
Right. There is $25,000 in the capital budget for fire rescue station to upgrade renovation, and that approved by the.
Doesn't mean it's going to stay there after final votes.
Of course, nothing.
And can I just tell you from experience years back, the reason why we started putting money in the budgets rather than putting it in capital is because it gave the department head more leeway to make sure. Janice Gomes really spearheaded that because she couldn't get her senior center. So we started putting the money into there, and then the department heads were taking the charge to make sure the stuff gets done. Because if you rely on the council, it didn't get done, or the administrator didn't get done. So being in their budget, they have a little more leeway to spend the money. It's their money to spend on their building.
Right.
okay.
Can I ask a question? When we do vote on those capital items, can we also restrict them so that they are used for that purpose? So if we're doing right, so if we approve that, because we're not at that point yet where we're going to approve the capital, but we can put the stipulation that it's restricted for that use only, correct?
Yes, say it again, I'm sorry.
So when we get to the capital expenses, like Brendan just said, that there's a line item that we're going to vote for. If we approve that, can we put the stipulation that's restricted for that use only? So if we're going to make separate line items for capital items, like building maintenance, that we restrict it to it only can be used for that purpose? Because that's been in the past, that's been some of the problem with some of it. Like we've, approved certain items, but then they haven't either been purchased or they've been shifted to another year.
On the other hand, this is $2,000 and.
No, I'm not.
Are you gonna?
I'm not worried about this particular item. I'm saying when we get to that, I mean, we can always choose to reduce that by $2,000 when we vote on it. But once we do get to the capital section, we are voting for these items, can we restrict them so that we know that those items are purchased and used for that?
I think so. Well, by resolution. I mean, it has to be by a vote.
That might be something, once we get to that we look for resolutions for that. that we know that that's what it's used for.
Okay, so, any other discussion on this? I want to make a motion as well for an amendment. And I don't want to cut off conversation on this one, but why don't I make my, if it's okay, I want to make my amendment.
Don't we have to finish this one?
Well, I mean, really, we gotta, I guess, should we vote on, I'll listen to the committee, I'm a little rusty on Robert's rules. We could vote on this one, and then we have another amendment, I guess. and-
Thought there could be up to two
Unless we're
amendments.
amending this amendment?
No, I'm not amending the amendment, all right.
So then
we'll do
I
separate.
think we have to finish.
Okay, so let's finish this one, and then I'll come forward. Okay, so is there any more discussion on this amendment? That's cleaner. I do like that, Jennifer, thank you. Is there any more discussion on this one? I'll just say that I'm going to support this because I think that it makes sense for the reasons Joe stated. But is there any more discussion? Okay, I'll call for a vote then. So this is a vote for the amendment, which would move $2,000 from heat to building maintenance, and keep the total the same. So all those in favor of the amendment? Great.
No.
Okay.
And I'm voting again. I vote
Opposed?
against.
Opposed? Opposed? Okay. One opposed? Okay. Great. Okay, so now we're back to a modified, now we have a modified thing there. Are there any other amendments? I have one to make. Is there any other amendments? Okay, so I want to make an amendment, and I would like to amend line item 5104 to 125,000. Okay?
Again, 125, what,
5104, line 5104
You must the amount.
to 125,000. What it was last year. And the new total that brings, if I did my math right, and I welcome anyone to check it, is 2599645.
Mr. Chairman, can you explain why?
Because,
He's made a motion, why don't, is there?
do I have a second?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I second it.
Okay, so I made a motion, and there's a second, so we have a live motion on the floor. And now we can have discussion. We have an amendment, so therefore we have the motions for an amendment, so now we can have discussion on the amendment. I was just questioning why. So, the reason why is because we have had problems in the overtime of the fire department for years. And here we are, it creeping up again. And I just don't want to see that happen. And I want to curtail it right here and right now. And there is no contract at the moment, and this is a way to add leverage to do that.
So I have two questions.
Sure.
One, do we have the actual for this year to date as already? And what is that, Denise?
I'll recognize Denise.
Thank you. Denise DiMederos, member of the Town Council. This is as of yesterday. I pulled it for this meeting. The overtime, we have $31,000 left. So we have spent $93,345. So we spent 74% of it so far, and we still have 5 months to go.
My second part of this question was, when the fire department was here, the discussion was that this is not necessarily all straight overtime with people leaving or people. Some of it is part of, they're on a 56-hour work week, and when they exceed, I'm sorry, I don't have the exact number, if they exceed 200 and some odd hours, in a month or
Right.
in a work period that we have to pay out per the state law.
Right, so some of this is contractually what we had to pay.
Per state
So
law,
this-
not our contract with them, per the state requires us to pay that
Well, yeah.
out of this.
Right, but yeah, you're right.
Right.
It's federal.
So federal law. So some of this is fixed based on their work week, not necessarily on people taking vacations and things like that.
Yeah, and we often talked about separating that. So
Yeah,
that,
I'd ask
and
that.
we do have we have a running tally of that every month. What is actual overtime, and what we're required to pay.
By any chance, do we know year to date how much of this overtime that was spent is from
I don't have that in front of me.
Okay.
I could get that number though,
That would
very
make it
easily.
easier, because then you would know actually how much was actual overtime and how much was this payout that we're required to pay. if we
Exactly, and
knew
I
that
can
division.
we can get someone to get it to you, because we do get breakdowns every month.
I think that would be helpful to know and come up with a better number, because it's all lumped in together.
Yep.
Deb?
I'm just wondering what the vacancies are on the fire department at this point. When we did visit, they had indicated that there were some people moving on, and if we have vacancies, there will be overtime. I just hope I'm not in need on the day when they don't have money for overtime and they can't put a firefighter on.
Jeff? No, I'm sorry.
Are we going around?
Yeah, let's go around since I think we're gonna probably everyone's gonna have an opinion here since this is probably gonna be a hot topic, so. Go ahead, Jennifer.
Mr. Chairman, I'm looking at the actual numbers from, not this year, but from the year before, 2017-18, and the actual was $194,417. So I'm concerned that if we bring it down so low, and given that we may be losing some staff, we could come into some legal problem by underfunding this.
I thank you for that comment. I will respond probably indirectly to that when it's my turn. Thank you.
Yeah, I support keeping the number that was requested by the town administrator and the fire department in terms of trying to manage what they need to do. I don't see this as a slush fund that is going to be abused. I think it helps them. They've got a lot of scheduling management issues, and this is one of those areas that it's how they absorb some of the shift differentials and things along those lines. So I would vote to keep it in.
I'd like to see the numbers that Jennifer Jocelyn requested that Ms. DiMadeira said she could get for us to break it down a little bit better.
I'll go last since it was my amendment. Ruth?
No comments right now.
I'm just, right now, I'm a little bit concerned about cutting that number, but that's all I have to say.
I'm not in favor of cutting it. I don't think that the overtime number is driven by mismanagement or poor management. I think it's more driven by salaries that they receive, the fact that we seem to have a revolving door to this day. That's going to drive overtime more than any other thing. And if we don't resolve the former, we're going to continue to have problems with overtime.
Justin?
I'm in support of the number as is right now until I see the information that Jennifer requested.
Well, I think the information would be great, but just from my own personal knowledge, I remember when we went to the 3-platoon contract that we were going to save money on overtime, and that's why that number had dropped way down. We're not required to have more than 7 men on a shift, but we end up with having 9. So if you can say that it wasn't mismanagement, but if we had kept those numbers down a little bit on the daily operation, we probably would have saved some money. There is some overtime that occurs. It's not technically overtime, but as she explained it, they do work there's federal audits. If you work so many hours, you get, I think they get 2 or 3 a week when they work. So, but like I said, and then they have to fill in for comp time and things like that. So we do have people come in, but if they had kept the numbers down to the minimum manning, we probably wouldn't have incurred the amount of overtime that we did. That's my own personal opinion.
So, yeah, so the situation and the reason I made the motion is, yeah, we're in the middle of a vote here. I really respectfully, we're about to vote. Thank you. So the situation, the reason I made the motion is simply that the amount of money that we spent so far is, as what we heard, is not that far off from where, from what we heard when Councilor DiMadeira stated. I know that there was a significant effort a few years ago to get that number down, and I don't like seeing this type of creep. And in addition, there is no contract now. So this is a wonderful opportunity to reduce the number and keep it in line. Thirdly, we now have no fire chief, and based upon public statements of the fire chief who has left, a big part of the problem with the overtime in the past has been because of that fire chief, and these are public statements. You can go back and look at them. And we have a new starting point here to do much better with overtime moving forward without him here. So, this is a really good opportunity for the taxpayer. It really comes down to management, and that's why I made that statement. And again, if you go back and look at the tapes, you'll see. All that being said, this is about a $50,000 differential. The other thing that this is going to do, if this were to pass, this amendment were to pass, and if eventually the amended motion were to pass, the other thing that this would do is, because they're in negotiations, is that it's going to give significant leverage to the town council in negotiation. And I want to give that leverage to the council. Now, if this is a preliminary vote, it's not a final vote. If this vote passes, though, the word's going to get out that it passed, and of course, we're going to hear from the administrator. We're going to hear from different people, and they're going to come back hard, and we're going to have to we're going to address it in the final vote. But I just would like to give the leverage to the town council from the outside so that they can be in negotiations and be in a better position. And that's what I would like to do with this number. There's a lot of history here for the creep on this number. And so that's the reason. And it's 50 grand. It's not nickels and dimes. It's real money. So that's my little speech on why. So anyway, I think with that discussion, I think we all went around once. I would like to call.
Just real quickly, I seem to remember when I put in budget 3 and Chief Lloyd was scolding me on the podium, I believe he said the number was 62,000. It's off the top of my head, I'm not sure. But that was how much was built into the contract as far as that overtime number. So everything above that is actual incurred overtime. And again, when we went on the tour, there could have been 7 men working, there were 9. So if they were staying down to the 7 level, a lot of this overtime wouldn't occur. It wouldn't be, that's just my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. Thank you, Joe. So I'll just call for a vote now on this, and so we can move on, and we can move on to other matters. So I'll call for a vote. So my amendment was to reduce it to 125 for the reasons I stated. as a preliminary vote, of course. So all those in favor of the motion, of the motion to amend? You got it reported? Opposed? And abstained? Okay, motion fails. We're back to the amended motion as it was by Joe.
Jeff, can I ask a question about making an amendment? Can we make an amendment to not include this particular item in this vote and then hold it until we get the information that I requested and vote for that by itself?
It's only preliminary.
If you want, sure.
And then we can
can make the
revisit it
motion.
when we have.
You can make any motion you
Okay.
want. You're a committee member.
Can I make a motion to remove, I need my glasses, 5104 overtime from our preliminary vote until more information is gathered?
Second.
Okay. So then we got to deduct it to come up with the total that we're going to vote on.
Okay, could someone do that math, please?
So we're going to remove 174.4 for a future vote. I can't even get you at the calculator.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor and a second to amend it to pull that one out. The math is being done. And is there any, while the math's being done, is there any, do we need to go around the table on that one, or is it pretty clear what it is? Can we have do we need discussion? Number?
I'm
541, oh, I got 941.
I'm concerned it'll get lost, and then we'll be short 174,000 instead of even 125.
But it's only preliminary.
We won't forget.
Preliminary. We won't forget it. Trust me, I'll bring it up.
Any other discussion?
Did I do it wrong?
All those,
I have the number if you want.
Oh, good. What did you
okay,
do?
oh yeah, let's have a number. We got agreement on the number?
The number now would be 2,106,541.
Say that.
Oh, sorry, thank you. The new number would be 2,106,541, 2106541.
541. Yep, that's what I got.
Great, we have agreement? Thank you. Okay, so we'll call for a vote. All those in favor of the motion to amend to pull the overtime out until we have more information? All those in favor of the amendment? Opposed? Motion carries.
So then can I make the motion to approve the fire department salaries minus the overtime until a future vote in the amount of $2,106,541?
Well, hold on. We already have a motion, we already have a motion on the floor for the total amended, the total number on the second page, amended with the heat, with
Oh.
Joe's heat thing. So if you don't mind withdrawing those.
I'll withdraw that until we get the new total.
We now have two amendments on there, which is what it is. So now we would just take a vote on, or we would amend some more, or we would just take a vote.
We just need the new number, right?
He just gave it to us.
Yeah, we just need a new number.
Yeah, but that's the salary amount, that $2,106,541.
Okay, so now we just have to add the 368,104 to it, and we have our number. Right, and we're done. It simply comes down to subtracting the overtime from the. Thank you, number crunchers. A number?
It's really just deducting out the 174.
Yeah, it's just subtracting out
The
the,
174.
from the total. right.
Yeah, that's it. 'cause
What do you
everything-
get?
Oh, I didn't do it.
Oh, you didn't do it?
I thought
Okay.
you guys were doing it.
Okay. Just subtract out the 174, whatever that number is, 174 from the total, 2649, if you could.
2475045. 2475045.
Two, 475,045.
Correct.
Thank you, Jennifer. Okay, so the motion as amended moves the 2,000 from heat down to station building maintenance, and it pulls out for now the overtime number of 170, whatever that number was.
174,400.
174,400. It pulls that out to give us a new total of $2,475,045.
I came up with a different, I came up with 2,474,645.
Okay.
Tom got that also.
Okay.
Okay, get the right number.
I did math, guys.
Let's get agreement.
I get 2474045.
Shows the importance of math education.
That's what you got there.
No, 645.
Oh, 645, yeah.
it should be 6.
Do we have agreement? Which is what? Will someone read it to me?
2,474,645.
645.
Correct.
Okay. We all good? Yep. Okay, so that is the total, new total. Okay, so, that being said, so we're back on the main motion, amended twice. I'll call for a vote now. So all those in favor of this amended twice motion? Opposed? 2. Got it? Okay, great. So, that's great. We're gonna, obviously, we're gonna look for some information there on that line item. And now we will move
Can I
on
ju-
to
can I
close
just-
out items. What's that?
Can we just make sure in the minutes it says we will forward the overtime line so that we're not short when we put this docket together?
Item number 5104.
Thank you, Deb and Jim. So the next item on the, we're done with 6A2. The next item on the agenda is number 7, discussion of and preliminary vote on school committee budget. I would like to welcome the school committee to the table.
So I'm going to call the school committee into order. We have Mrs. Pavo, Mrs. Black, Mrs. Black, Ms. Farnworth, and myself here today, and Dr. Sanchioni, and our interim business manager, Joe Crowley. Ms. Palish sends her apologies. She has work obligations. It is getting to be tax season.
Can you repeat the name of who you said was with you? Sorry.
I'm sorry?
Can you repeat who you said was with you so I
Oh.
can get his name?
It's Joe Crowley, Crowley. Joe?
Thank you.
I would think we're probably in order to do, well, we've done introductions here, but Mr. Crowley hasn't met everyone, so we'll go, I don't believe, so we'll go around very quickly. Go ahead.
Justin McBride.
Jay Edwards.
Tom Haley.
Ruth Hollenbach.
Jeff Karen.
Sherry Ockery.
Brendan McNally?
Jennifer Rashley.
Thank you very much. So I thank you for coming back, and we, of course, had our first meeting, was a few weeks ago now, and welcome. So, one of the things in the first meeting was we got an awful lot of information, and we took a break so we could review it and whatnot. And we hope to have some dialogue tonight, and maybe we could ask some questions and whatnot about that information. And then, and that was sort of the first thing. And then the second item, which is the item that you called me about a few weeks ago, or a few days ago, actually, that you were going to also speak a little bit about, speak tonight about the money situation that was in the press. You were going to speak to that at some point tonight to us, and I think to publicly, actually, too, so.
So I think the best thing might be to turn it over to Dr. Sanchioni, who has sort of a final budget presentation of ours, and then allow you guys to ask questions, and we can go from there. Does that sound?
Yeah, that's fantastic, yeah.
Okay.
So,
So-
I have one question before we begin.
Yep.
Is the final numbers, the final recommendations or numbers from the town council, school committee, and whatnot, are all due to us by Saturday, the 16th?
Right.
Have you adopted one? Has the school committee
Yes,
adopted one?
so on
Oh.
am I live here? Yeah, I guess so.
Is it in this presentation?
Yeah,
Oh,
so,
great, okay.
so we met on Tuesday. So when we were here a few weeks ago, went over, gave you guys a lot of information, and had sort of a, what was still then a somewhat preliminary number. That's why I wanted to let Dr. Sanchioni
great.
kind of present. And we did formally adopt a number so that we're by the deadline of Saturday.
Okay, great. I just wondered if it was part of the presentation. Thank you. Doctor, take it away.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, members of the Budget Committee, pleasure to be with you here this evening, and I'm sure someone's going to bring me up there, right?
There's a button, probably have to hit the
blue button, hit it
the blue
twice.
button. It'll probably wake up.
Twice?
Oh, no, just one second.
Just one,
Sure,
twice
you
my
would.
turn off. Did it go?
I saw the blue light come on when you hit it.
Yeah, it's on. It's going. I think it's just taking a second.
Yeah, it's coming up. Yeah, it's up. I think now.
There it is.
It's coming.
Is is your laptop gonna, speak? Is it?
It's your laptop.
It will become much brighter.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just the lamp warming up.
Nope. See mine. Have you run into this, Tom? Takes a few minutes to come through.
We're Mac people at the school, so you gotta. Where's the guy in the back? He knows how to do it. Where's my buddy back there?
Thank you, Anna.
Just so you know, I got a little stipend for your budget. I know.
It's in the wrong place.
Will you be referencing this document
It's an updated version of that, which we can provide.
so we
you
can
too.
follow along and update it?
Sure, that's probably a good way to do it.
So we give us this. Yeah.
You can provide us like an email, a copy of that? or something?
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
That's what they gave us.
Okay, so again, it's a pleasure to address you this evening. As Dr. Locken has alluded to, our school committee's obviously gone through this budget and multiple permutations of it, and tonight wants to present to you a number for your consideration. I'm going to skip through some of the slides that I presented to you last time we were here. It's sort of the background information. You have that in the presentation I gave you last time, and all this information is also included in the budget book you were provided. So our goals are there, and our enrollment is there, per pupil expenditures there. So I'll start with the numbers. So an executive summary. Current budget we're working on, I'll use round numbers, 30.2 million. Looking to increase it by 1.7 million. Overall, 5.6% increase. And the number that the school committee voted Tuesday evening is 31,947,720. And certainly want to break that down this evening for the budget committee. So I'm going to skip a couple charts that you saw last time. And again, into the numbers here, our budget is 80% salaries. And salaries obviously are our people, our organization, our industry is predicated on the success of our employees. And so when you look at our 80% of our salary budget here, currently operating at 17.2 million, and then those numbers in the middle there, those are fixed and mandated costs other than the one almost second from the bottom that says staff additions. So steps, lane changes, the contract, and longevity, fixed and mandated costs for us. They're things we have to adhere to. The staff additions, the 90,000, I'll show that to you momentarily. So in salary alone, we're looking in, not, the largest portion of the increase is located here. It's 1.2 million. It's a 7.3% increase in salary alone. Last time we were here, we were talking about adding 7.8 FTE. Again, our organization is centered around doing the best for our students and providing the best staffing and the courses and things like that. And certainly we've gone back and looked at that and trying to be as fiscally responsible as possible, and have amended that request down to these real key positions here. It's a behavior specialist at the middle school that works with challenging students, behavior, emotional students. We want to do a better job serving those students. It's a 0.2 position at Ranger to provide more math remediation services. It's a 0.2 position at the high school to provide some additional physics courses. We want to provide some leadership opportunities at the elementary for our teachers. It's a small amount. We want to have a stipend for truancy residency so that we can have someone working with our students who are not coming to school, and for people who are moving into town or allegedly moving, having a Tiverton residence but actually don't live here. So we need some support there. And then a real small amount for stipends in athletics. A lot of teams and clubs that are currently operating on a volunteer business, we want to try to grow that a little bit, again, in the best interests of our students. So if 80% of our budget is staffing, the other 20% is all of our expenses. So we're operating at about 13 million. Want to increase that by 463,000, brings it up to 13.4 million. It's a 3.4% increase. And the drivers behind our expenses are technology, a small amount for athletics, transportation, which is a fixed and mandated cost. That's our contracting for all our buses, and a maintenance contract to take care of the highly efficient the systems that are the boiler and the heating systems in all 5 of our schools that are highly technological. I'm going to skip past this. Again, we provided this to you last time, some historical information on how our budget has grown over the last several years and how the fund balance has decreased as a result of some projects that schools have been involved in. I want to just pause here. I know I showed this to you last time, and again, as a superintendent of the schools, my number one, my mission, my vision of everything we do here is centered on what's in the best interest of our students. The almost 1,800 students who attend our schools, and when you look at data that says 20 students didn't graduate one year and 15 students, it's just, for 2020, it just can't happen. I mean, we have to graduate every student. And what I can say to you is we can do this. There's no doubt about it. But you need the investment in the school system to make sure this happens. And so I always say, the investment comes first. You invest first, and we're saying to you, we can guarantee you the results. So I want to break that $31 million budget down a little bit for you now. The 30.5, again, that is the number that the school committee voted on Tuesday evening. Again, as you already heard me say, it's a $1.7 million increase in revenue. But we want to identify that state aid is at $776,198. So again, the town contribution then is $938,154, or 4% over last year. And again, we've shown you on the next line down the FY19 budget allocation, what a 4% increase is, and that's where that number comes from. And so what this does for us is it meets all those fixed and mandated costs. It adds that 1.4 new staff and some stipends, and it reduces, or it allows for very modest increase in technology, curriculum, and the athletic budget. It does not fund capital. And so momentarily I'll show you capital, which we hope we can, lump in with the town and look at that under a different lens. But I want to show you a couple other budget scenarios and a couple that, have been out there. So there's the 2% budget. And here you're seeing what would be allocated by the town, the $467 with state aid, which would bring a budget of $31,478,000. Now, I want to jump you back here and just again, so the budget the school committee voted was $31,947,000. It's a very modest budget. On this page here, I want to call your attention to a budget number I'm showing you, $31,591,790. That is a bare bones, absolute, cannot go below budget for us. What's happened there is we've stripped out almost $400,000 from every expense account we can. We've wiped out any increases in technology and curriculum. Basically, it's our staff, it's maintenance, it's energy, and it's transportation. So if you funded the schools at a 2% budget, that leaves a $113,000 deficit. And the thing I need you to appreciate here is that the only place that next cut can come from is people. I'm showing you already almost almost $400,000 cut to our expenses. We can't afford to lose any people. There was another number that we saw in a document that came out that was funding the schools at $31,384,000, which is a little less, which will leave a $206,000 deficit. Again, I'm going to express to you the same thing, that a bare bones budget is a $31.56 million budget. If that budget was funded, that deficit again would have to be addressed in people. And I just wanted to break it out for you a little bit to show that increase minus state aid, it's a 1.59% investment by the town. So we'd like to obviously dialogue with you about that investment and the impact it would have on the school system. I'm going to skip that slide because hopefully we're not talking about just the state aid budget, because that would just cause devastation for the school department. Just to go through capital. Again, we'd ask for your consideration on some capital requests. In your budget book, we provided you a 5-year plan on capital. We're looking to fund $500,000 of that. Some of the items on here are critically important to the school system. An intercom system at the high school where we don't have intercom in some of the common areas. It's a safety issue. Many of you commented on the condition of the bathrooms at the middle school and the high school. So repairs there to do some complete renovations. A front door at the middle school, which is again a safety issue. A small investment in our tennis courts, which is sort of a pay me now, pay me later. It's $5,000 now. If it continues to go and frost heaves and things like that, it's going to be a $50,000 repair in a year or two. We've got copier replacement on there because we got some very expensive service contracts with some very old copiers in our schools. We could eliminate that by bringing in some new machines and then realize some savings in our operating budget that way. Our kitchen equipment is circa 1970s. We spend a lot of time repairing that equipment at high amounts. So again, investing in this equipment again brings the savings in our maintenance accounts. And then we want to replace the front door at Fort Barton. Again, that's a safety request. So we've got capital, again, not part of the operating request, but again, for your consideration from funding. And I just want to show you this slide in conclusion. There's been, as you know, the school committee has invested in our teachers. The most important asset we have in our system is our people. It's a very hardworking, dedicated staff. And just to put in perspective that contract, this is where we are. This is with the raise. So this year, what our teachers are being paid at step one, you can see how we compare to other communities. Again, it's a very modest investment. Our principals will be out at 3 different job fairs over the next couple months trying to recruit the best and brightest teachers to come to Tiverton, and this is what we compete against. At step 5, I want to show you 3 increments. The gap's a little closer, but it's still, Tiverton's still on the low end. And at the top step, so there's an investment in our staff. We're appreciative of the efforts of the school committee on that contract, but certainly want to put it in perspective. By no means was this a huge investment, or certainly by no means a fiscally irresponsible investment. So that's a quick overview of our operating budget, the request behind the number, our capital separated out from that. I'll pause there and certainly answer any questions, and if you want to get into the that other account, we certainly can go there too.
Okay, so is there any way that you could, for the benefit of the audience and the people on the committee, is there any way you can put that on shuffle and just have it cycle through? Because I know we were taking notes, some of us, and I tried to take a photo of one of the slides. Is there any way you can put that on like a shuffle? I don't know if the computer will do that, but it'd be wonderful if like they would just cycle through. That way people could sort of pick up on it as we talk, or committee members could look at it. I don't know if it'll do it, but.
I know we're Mac people in the school system, so this PC is a little foreign to me. I could ask Mr. Crowley to just keep banging his finger on it.
Maybe you could just tap the mouse and just hit next a few times. That'd be great. I mean, just to kind of cycle through it. That'd be wonderful. I just think it would help, especially some of the slides that were, some of those slides were very interesting. And we were disadvantaged. We don't have copies, so.
Yeah, there is a way to do a slideshow.
Yeah.
Resume slideshow. Here we go. Is that it? Yeah.
No, hit escape.
Escape.
Okay, so
Slideshow.
try.
Use timing.
Or animations, maybe. See if there's.
Can I ask a question? Rather than do a slideshow, could we blow through them again, and if we have a question about that page, maybe we
We can do
stop for
that.
a minute?
Maybe that's a good way,
Because I
yeah.
made some notes, and I just want to find out how some things changed.
Maybe that's a better way. Jennifer has a good way. Can we go back to the beginning?
Yep.
And just flip through them, and I think
If we
we'll
have
probably hit a certain slide that there's a lot of interest in, and maybe we could focus on them and spend time on that, and maybe that's a better way, actually. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you for that, Jennifer. So, we go to the beginning.
Sure. So first show it. First was the executive summary, which is the number the school committee voted.
So, this is 5% increase with your state aid, correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Do you know what the percentage is without state aid? With the town?
The local tally is 4%.
4%, okay.
And that's the maximum allowed by state law, I believe?
Without an override.
Okay. Any other questions on this slide? Next, please.
Next, I showed you the 80% of our budget, which is salaries.
This one I have questions.
So this is salaries, so 7.3% salaries.
Jeff, are we going to go around?
I guess we could, yeah. Why don't we do that? So, since you're helping so much, go ahead, you start. We're gonna go around and just ask questions of these slides. I think that'll be fruitful. Go ahead.
So I just have a couple questions about this slide specifically. So the original presentation was staff addition 7.8 and a cost of 545,897. We're now at, we don't have the number, but we're now at 90,000.
So let me break that.
So that was a huge decrease. What was removed and why is it no longer needed?
So there was our original request right there. You can see what was removed: paraprofessionals, a behavior specialist at Pocasset, a kindergarten aide at Fort Barton, PE health teacher at the high school, small amount, Portuguese teacher at the high school, maintenance tech, custodian in the middle school where we're severely understaffed there, network administrator, and then the coaching activity stipends, we trimmed that down to about 1/10 of what we were originally requesting. So there's some key positions there, but it's just, the administration and school committee's decision to try to be fiscally responsible as possible and present a budget that, people would feel good about.
It's not that those positions were not needed or important. It's rather, we recognize the need to bring it to 4%, and so we prioritized.
Deb?
So, and I know we're looking at graduation rates increasing, and we need to click in on the kids early on. So I know you had a lot of paraprofessionals at the lower grades, so I know this was tough cuts, but I do appreciate that you were able to do that. And hopefully if we can engage them when they're younger, though, we can keep them when they're older, and that will increase our graduation rates. And I know touchy subject, but I know that their positions have been, or staff have been eliminated from middle school and high school. So the plan is to replace those positions.
Yeah, that's totally unrelated to budgeting. Those positions still remain. They're crucial to us. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
You want to see other slides?
I had questions.
No, we're gonna just kind of go around. So Jennifer, any questions?
Members of the school committee, can you tell us how many years over the last 6 has the school been level funded?
So for the last 2 years, and this slide is a little bit misleading. What I mean by that is FY 18 shows a 0.9% increase and FY 19 shows a 1.1%. That is all increases in state aid. Not a dime of that came from Tiverton. Okay? So, and then FY 15, 16, and 17, I'm not sure I can tell you specifically what the local increase was, but in each of those years there was also increases in state aid. So the increases were pretty modest from the local levy. So 2 years definitely were 0 and 0, the 2 most recent fiscal years. 15, 16, and 17, I don't recall exactly what the precise number of the local levy was. It clearly was, less than 0.6% in FY 16 and 17, and we don't actually have a number up there for FY 17. I don't know if Mrs. Black might actually, she carries those kind of details and charts all over the place. And here she comes.
I do this so that I know when I sit here and you people are talking about something, I can't see it, I go crazy. So I make sure that the audience and the citizens can see, and then I'll show it to you. So this is the appropriation history, 13 to 18. You like to go that 5-year. And you can see the bottom, the average is 1.3%. Okay, so this is, it can go way back, and Mr. Karen was there when it was 5.5 increases and 4.7 and much higher than that. So I think we've all worked together to try to bring this to a reasonable sum. And last year, we're the ones that asked for 0. It wasn't like the people that voted our budget down, because we had that, and I feel that situation, we all got together and said, we're not going to ask for anything this year until we resolve that whole thing. And as you can see, it came down to 900 something, so we did spend it. So that's 1.3.
So can you tell us for the same period how much healthcare costs have gone up? Or the percentage, the comparison. What I'm interested in knowing is the small
So one of the
bump
things
up-
that actually that you're kind of getting at is, so for instance in FY 19, we took approximately $540,000 out of the fund balance to actually fund operations for this fiscal year. That creates a structural deficit, but we thought that with favorability that we had run in other years, that it was a sound thing to do. One of the things that you saw in Dr. Sanchioni's slides were, there's a couple things that drive salary increases. One is the contractual obligation that we had to of the 3% increase for the teachers and the administrators and Council 94 members. The other is the lane changes and the step increases that come along with each year. So those are, basically fixed increases as well. So you're right, healthcare is going to increase no matter what the overall budget increases, and those steps and lane changes are going to result in increases in salary as well on a year by year. So healthcare was increased by 6% this fiscal year.
6%.
6%.
Dr. Larkin?
Yes, Mrs. Black.
Thank you.
I'm Mr. Karen's.
I'm just going to, Mr. Karen, I have to ask both of you.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So, Mr. Ashley, the health care is very important. The 3 drivers we've always found is special needs, health care, and pensions, because we're given those numbers. If we have the students that move in, you're going to fund it, and we're happy to do that. We want to service every child, but we can't predict that. So the health care, when Mrs. DeMedeiros and I were on the school committee, when we started, it was $11.50 flat that all the teachers paid for their copay. And that's a big issue, because you know how health care can fly up, and then we're still at $11.50 flat. So during that negotiation, the biggest thing was to get to a percentage. And that was a huge battle if everyone was around to see that. So we went from that to 12%, and then to 15, 18, and then to 20. So when we got to 20%, we were one of the highest copays in the state. When Rhode Island Association of School Committee will give you those numbers. And so that was a huge saver. And at the same time, the teachers in Council 94 were getting 0 in their raises. So after a while, you start going backwards. So that's why we sat down this year and addressed it, because you saw the slides. We don't want to lose people to other communities. We want the best teachers we can get for our kids. And that's not always the reason. Don't get me wrong, but that's a big driver. So that's the health care. Thank you.
So Tiverton is, in Newport County, has the lowest salaries. And we've been running a deficit over the last few years partially due to various operating costs, including healthcare.
I'm not sure I would say we were running a deficit. We created a structural deficit last year by funding some of our budget out of the fund balance.
Okay, thank you.
Brendan?
Could you go back to the slide that does the salary summary? That's it. So as I understand, and this is in part with the discussion that we had last time, a number of these are contractual, and just making sure, as if I understand it, the 309, the 381, the lane changes, the contracts, and the longevity. And that when we look at the $90,000 that was requested, that's the 1.4 plus the stipends.
Yes.
Is that correct? Okay. So kind of once again, it's sort of things built in terms of increases that are contractual rather than priority changes where we're adding. So that would be one. And then similarly, when you go to looking at the expenses, so we have, a question would be in here, these are all things that you detail. I think that, as I understand it, the transportation is busing, that's contractual. Is that correct?
Yes.
And maintenance was a request. We have the new equipment in the high school and the middle school with the new boilers, and this is the...
So in equally as important, I believe, is the fact that the 3 elementary schools are not covered by any maintenance contract right now. So this is for all 5 schools.
This would cover all schools.
So we're kind of playing catch up a little bit in that regard.
Okay. And then the other question, that in the technology number, there had been a request in some of the earlier things that you had mentioned in terms of purchasing devices for students. Is this included in the 260s? Is there a reason why that wouldn't be considered a capital expense rather than basically an operating expense?
I've seen it done both ways with school budgets, and I guess the paradigm in Tiverton was that it's always resided in the operating budget. So
Okay.
you know, if it was funded a different way, it would be, I'm sure the school committee would be fine with that.
Okay.
Actually, Dr. Sanquioni, I know you're still with us for less than a year. We hadn't previously budgeted technology purchases through the capital. This year, we've decided to roll it into operations, as it is when you think about it, it's a recurring expense. It's not every year that it's going to be the same number, but your laptops don't last forever. Other pieces of equipment don't last forever. We wanted to make sure that we recognize that technology is with us to stay.
And I guess I want to make a point that isn't all devices. That is partly subscriptions for online services, it's routers, it's switches, it's to keep the system rolling too.
Right, okay, so some portion of that is purchase of new equipment. And the last one is that when you reviewed where Tiverton stands versus the other communities, so you had the different step 1, 5, and 10, why did you choose those towns?
More because they were border towns of us, and that's, ultimately when we go to a job fair, that's who we're competing against for, the best teachers.
Mm-hmm.
One thing also, that Middletown and Bristol Warren demographically look very similar to us. So when we're comparing ourselves against other communities in Rhode Island, those are our most reliable comparators.
Mhm.
If we compared ourselves to Barrington, would have there'd be a much higher median income in Barrington, and that's sort of one of the things that actually drives
Mhm.
educational achievement more than anything else is actually what median income is. It's how much do your parents make. If we compared ourselves to Central Falls, the demographic would be very different, and so you couldn't make those kinds of comparisons. So that's another, important thing to think about when you're sort of making comparisons between communities.
Great. And so I guess that the import to me would be is when looking to hire, when you see people who are responding to advertisements, these are typically the school districts that they're looking, we're competing against.
Probably Portsmouth more than anywhere else.
Because we have in a number of other positions within the town where we show where we stand in terms of salaries, and we tend to be on the left end. And that's everyone out of the 39 communities in Rhode Island, whereas this here, we always end up on the low end. And the reason you're doing that is you're showing ones with whom we compete.
Right.
Thank you.
Sherry?
Okay, I don't know if this is going to correlate with the slide that's up there, but what I wanted to know is how much of the budget is, is needed to cover the state's required BP, the Basic Education Plan, and other regulatory programs? Do you know? Or do you guys have a line item in there, in your budget, in your school budget?
I don't think sorry, the educator.
I'd say to you, the basic and the mandatory compared to what we're offering is not, there's a slim line there. Our class sizes are right there at the elementary level. We're offering, classes for all of our students. It's not a lot of exorbitant extra classes. Same thing at the middle school and at the high school. Our electives are not that deep, which is why we've made some requests for additional staffing. So,
Do you know if we're considered a high local contribution community? We are considered a high local contribution community? Okay.
What does that mean?
Well,
So let me gloss that a little bit. If you look at how much of our budget is contributed to by state aid, we're in, I want to say the 15 to 20% range. Providence, Central Falls, Pawtucket, they're over 70% of their budget is funded by state aid. So, in Vermont, we used to call them gold towns, towns that really were, their taxes were going basically to fund programs in other towns, so.
basically, I'm trying to understand because I don't know
Yeah,
that
sure.
much about the school.
Yeah.
I pulled
So-
up the law because I didn't know a lot about the maintenance of effort. And so I had pulled up the actual law and
Right.
was trying to figure out exactly where our school, or where our school system falls and whether there's a basic education program amount that says that the cities
I
or
don't think
the
you could-
towns have to fund.
I don't think you can dissect out what what part of the budget is actually going to fund the basic education program. The basic education program is a floor, not a ceiling, or not even aspirational. It is what is required by law. And so if that's all you're doing, you're kind of failing, actually. You're not.
So do you add the state aid in when you guys are calculating? Do you add your state aid in to?
When we're calculating.
When you're, so you have like a basic number that's given that's required, and then we add the state aid in to get the number?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Number by appropriation.
Just one? Okay.
Oh, yeah. Oh, so yes. So you can't appropriate, you can't bifurcate, is what it's called. You cannot say, we're gonna give this much, and we're assuming that the state is gonna give this much. By law, and I believe by charter as well, you have to approve one number for the school budget. If that's what you're getting at, I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, that's what it was.
I think that's what I asked last week when we got it up, and I was like, well, it says 3.8, but that includes state aid.
Yeah. Okay, I'll let you go because I have other questions that we have to do with other.
Mr. Karen, may I just answer her first question?
I will let you, Shelley, sure.
Okay, thank you. This is a good one that everyone should everyone should pay attention to and call your state reps and senators and everything. So this is Tiverton School Department budget, and you can see the blue is local, what you all pay, and then you have state aid, which is, and then you have the federal government, which is so small, it's red, you can't see it, because they don't give us anything. Okay, so if you want to call your state representatives and everybody in Washington, because this is not fair, it's what Sherry just asked, because it's all from local. That's why we have such a problem. When the law was first passed in the 80s, it was supposed to be 60-40. 60 from the state and 40 from the cities and towns. That would be fabulous. And then they kept chipping it away at it, and the banking crisis and everything else. And now it's in the teens for us. And so that's why same with special ed needs. They passed a law too in the 70s, and it was supposed to be 60-40, and we're both down to the teens. So that's a good question, Sherry. Thank you.
So, and just another way to answer your question, when we had the legislative delegation come to sort of talk with us and see what was, on their mind, and hopefully they wanted to know what was on our mind, one of the things we did ask them about was the funding formula, which is sort of the logarithmic calculations that you go through to determine how much each town or community gets from state aid. And I think, Tiverton sort of is a loser in that calculation. And when we said, is there any possibility of that being looked at again in the legislature, the frank answer was not really, because the communities that benefit from it have the most votes.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Okay. Thank you. So,
Thank you.
I'm got a lot of questions as well, but I'm going to start with questions that I believe you've already seen, and I had sent 5 questions in writing the night that I couldn't make it, and I do apologize for not being able to make it that night due to family commitment. And the second question specifically talks about, all I had at that point to go off was your letter, and that you submitted to us in the cover letter on January 15th. And it references, in quotes, available revenue. And, I just, in the way it references is that, the request is matched up against available revenue. And so, the request tonight is a little bit less than the original number that was put forth. But I guess I'm questioning what is that available revenue, and I'm questioning, I'm questioning the onsots that a 4% increase in local taxes or local tax revenue is available. I'm questioning that onsots to that statement, I guess. That's my question. I'm questioning
the onsots.
Yeah, I'm questioning the predicate, if you will. I'm questioning the position, if you will, that a 4% increase in local revenue from property taxes is available. I'm questioning that position of what appears to be the position. It is the position of the school committee. So you have a statement you made, which is that the available revenue, that your budget matches the available revenue, okay? And tonight we get a final number, which is a 4% increase from and it specifically called, at that point, I didn't know what the available revenue was. I didn't know if it was state aid, casino money. I had no idea what these revenue sources were at that point. Now tonight, I see that one of the sources of available revenue is in fact property tax revenue from the local sources, okay? And it's a 4% increase. So I'm questioning the position that this is available revenue. I mean, the
So
position that
basically,
people.
you'd rather have a different term than available revenue.
What's that?
You'd rather have a different term than available revenue?
I guess what I'm questioning is
I can understand that
is
sort
the
of
position
connotation
of the school committee that I'm going down to, and it's really the charge of the budget committee, the position of the school committee that the people can afford a 4% increase, and, you know, as the budget committee does its job eventually and weighs the costs and services versus the ability of the taxpayer, and does its job in diligence on what the townspeople can afford, that there's this assumption that, you know, according to the statement made in the letter, and according to what we saw tonight, that a 4% increase from property taxes is available, okay? And I'm questioning, like, the logic or the thought process that, you know, that the people can afford a 4% increase, especially on such a big number. I mean, this isn't a $300 line item.
Yeah. So I think, you know, I think your objection is to the term available revenue.
Well, my objection is to.
The use of those words.
I guess, yeah, my objection is to the term available
Right,
revenue.
right,
Because,
okay.
because if it's available, it means that essentially that the taxpayers' pockets are open for the taking and available. It's
The
available.
school committee in no way takes the position that just because the law allows a 4% increase, that is available, as in it is sitting on the table or in the bank. Granted, we have not discussed that use of that term, and so I'm sort of inferring what I believe the rest of the committee would agree to. I think probably a better term that might have been more acceptable to you is the maximum allowed increase in the levy is, you know, X. And what I believe we are representing to you tonight is that in order to do the things that need to be done for the school district in the context of 0% increase over the last 2 years, and recognizing the limitations both in law and what is fiscally responsible, is that this budget, which relies on a 4% local levy, is the responsible thing to do for the children of Tiverton and for the taxpayers.
Okay. So yeah, the sentence is, the school committee recognized that budgets are about priorities, while at the same time balancing those priorities against available revenue. And that's the sentence I'm talking about. And
I note your objection to it.
yeah, I just want to be clear. Okay, so that being said, second question I have, I'm going to ask two questions now. I have a lot, but I'm going to ask two questions now. The second question I have is couch number 4 that I submitted back on 21st of February. And in the same budget message that was submitted, there was a reference to a new collective bargaining agreements. And I had asked at that point for a copy of the fiscal impact statement if there was one ever published.
It is published, it's online.
Okay, well, I never received one. I don't know where to find that. I'm sorry if it is.
It's on the school website.
Okay, so now I know where to look for it, and I'll pull it. I would have appreciated a courtesy copy or knowledge of that. So that being said, I do see here from tonight's numbers that we have a 7.3% increase in salaries, and more pertinently, that the current 4% over last year represents a $938,000 increase, which, as we stated, is the maximum allowed in the request, as was stated, I'm sorry. So my question is, and I'll focus on the 7.3% increase in salaries. So, and the 938,000. So, I don't know exactly what, from the slide, exactly what the 7.3% increase correlates to in dollars. I don't have that number. I don't think it's the full 938. I doubt it's the full amount. However, it's a significant amount, and I'm I guess from the fiscal impact statement, are we funding now year 1 or year 2 of this contract that is apparently been put in place?
Year two.
We're funding year 2, okay.
Yeah.
So there's year 1, and are we funding year 1 retroactively?
No, so year 1, so let's be perfectly, open about this. So the collective bargaining agreement executed with NEA Tiverton called for a 3% increase in the first year of the contract, and then 3.5% in the second and third years of the contract. In our FY19 budget, we had built in a 2% increase, so 1% had to be made up, and the 3.5% increase is in this next fiscal year. The 7.3% you see on that slide accounts for the 3% increase in the collective bargaining agreement, as well as all of those step and lane changes. So when a teacher, by contract, if teachers in year 1, they make the salary of a first-year teacher. In year 2, they make the salary of a second-year teacher. So those are step increases that occur every year up to step 10 in Tiverton. Some communities have actually 12 steps. So you're looking like you're not understanding what I'm saying.
So is it safe to say that a 3.5% increase in the contract model that you have ends up costing, in this scenario anyway, 7.3% because of all the lane increases and whatnot? Is that?
Yeah, yeah.
What's that?
The increase, not total budget. So that 7.3%, that's not the total 31 million.
No, I understand, but the salary number.
So yes, you're right. So
it almost doubles.
if a teacher is,
Minus those staff additions.
right, minus the staff additions, right. So if a teacher is in year 5, okay, and they are going to become a 6-year teacher, they get an increase by virtue of the fact that they're becoming a 6-year teacher. They get in this contract, in the second year of this contract, they get a 3.5% increase as well, because that's what's in the contract.
Okay. So I heard you say that, first of all, you had budgeted for a 2% increase and in the prior year, and you gave away 3, which created a 1%.
It was not
problem.
giving it away, it was a negotiated.
You negotiated
agreement.
the 3%, which is created a 1% differential. I heard that. And then in the current year, I heard 3.5%, and in the third year, in the current year we're discussing, in the third year I heard 3.5%.
Correct.
And I'm now learning that 3.5% scales to about 7.3%. So, and
The contract
now
is
I flipped
also
the-
posted online, you could review
No, I
the
understand. I'm
provisions of it.
learning this. So now I hear that a 2% increase, in local funding results in a $113,000 deficit. A 2% increase in local funding from the taxpayers results, that was one of your slides, I wrote this down. One of the few things I was able to catch. Results in a $113,000 deficit. And how could that be? Well, I can see how that can be because your labor costs have gone up so much. So clearly.
Every cost has gone up and the budget has not gone up in 2 years.
Okay, and one of those years, when you say you were level funded from local, you chose to do that. You were self-imposed.
Yeah,
Okay, I'm
recognizing
just saying,
the political
don't
realities
make it sound like it was your decision. I'm just saying. It doesn't sound that way sometimes when it's stated, but.
It was 0% for 2 years.
Yeah. True.
That's all I'm saying.
Sure. And so, what I want to say though is that if you increase, okay, in a situation where there's a finite pot of money to pay salaries from, okay, approximately, if you increase salaries by 7.3%, roughly, you're going to have to reduce your staff size by 7.3% from a finite pot of money. I mean, this is not rocket science. If you give a 5% raise, okay, you're going to have to reduce your staff size roughly by 5% to afford the raise. So when I see slides up here that say that a 2% increase from the taxpayers, which frankly is generous, results in a $113,000 deficit, and I scratch my head, and someone else may scratch their head. Well, the way that happens is because of the huge increase in the pay rate. And so, you know, I'm quite perplexed actually at how one would, having budgeted 2%, give away 3% in the prior year, how 3.5%, especially when it scales to 7.3, would then be 2 years in a row. And then we find out that we want to add FTEs and, you know, to try to improve the program and whatnot. I mean, if anything, if you want to add FTEs, you know, in the world, I mean, you'd want to go the other way with salaries. Now, I know that may be an oxymoron, but obviously going this direction is not the way you'd want to go if you want to try to add staff. So I'm really perplexed by this situation, actually. I'll leave it at that for now. I've spoken enough. I've got a lot more to say, but I've spoken enough for now. Thank you. Ruth?
A little concerned that technology went down. What came out of technology to bring it down? Do you know? So important in this day and age.
Yeah, I appreciate you asking that question. Again, it's about bringing the budget in, what we feel to be fiscally responsible. So it's just a little bit out of a bunch of little accounts. So we cut back on the internet, we cut back on some device purchases, we've eliminated a subscription to an online service, things of that nature.
But the course, the technology courses that they'll learn will be there still?
Correct,
Okay.
yeah, the courses will still be there, yes.
Okay. And the transportation went up. That seemed like a very bad thing. The technology went down and transportation went up. I mean,
Right,
I'm
well,
always looking
transportation's-
for it to go down, you know,
Yeah.
the buses, it's just amazing. I mean, a lot of them empty, and I know you have to have it, but it's just so annoying. Yeah.
It's just locked into a contract, and it's
Okay.
not just our buses, it's the vans, it's the special ed transportation, it's
Okay.
transportation as a whole locked in there.
Okay, thank you.
It's locked in by the state, isn't it?
I'm sorry?
Don't we have to use the specific vendor? It's locked in by the state?
Yes.
Well-
It's a cost that we can't really control.
It's a very difficult cost to control. When we went out for bid 2 years ago, I think it was, we only had one bidder. It frankly looked a little bit like collusion, but it would be impossible to prove.
I didn't know we were going to that side. Can I just ask a quick question, because Ruth was on transportation? That transportation contract, that is not only to our 5 schools, is that correct? Where else do those buses go, which may lead to the
So
fact
we
that
are
some
by-
of them are
Yeah,
have
so
reduced
we are
people
by
on them?
law required to provide transportation to the parochial schools.
So private schools are using
Right.
that bus system? Is that
Yeah.
correct? What private schools do you currently transport students to?
St. Philomena's, and I'm not sure of the other ones. Do you? All Saints.
And that's out of that 112,000?
Yeah,
Is that
that's all part of that's law. I mean, you could argue the merits of it, but that is the law. We also
But I don't
provide.
think it's common knowledge either.
Probably not. We also actually have to provide money for books and some other supports, and then there's also.
To those parochial schools?
Yes.
Okay, and
Yeah.
that's
To the-
not,
to the
there's no
students.
state aid offset by that, is that correct? So
That
that
is
comes
correct.
100% out of our budget for those students that are not enrolled in our school system, that are in private
That is
schools?
correct, but they're citizens of Tiverton. The other transportation that is in that number is to out-of-district placements and other types of transportation that are, it's not just
So like
sort of the
Bradley,
kids.
the
Yes, it's not
vocational
just,
school.
it's just, it's not kids sort of getting out of the middle school and going home. It's lots of different things.
Thank you.
One of the other things that surprised me was how many are on the disability list, like around 300 students or something like that. Is there how does that get determined? How does that get determined? Who determines what category of students in disability? Is there some state law or some way of determining what the disability is? It's just so, the short answer is fine. It was amazing to me, you know.
It's a federal law that's somewhat governed by the state, which makes it a little complex. No parent wants their child to be labeled handicapped. And so it's a complex problem of assessing a child's strengths and weaknesses, comparing that to what the district can provide, and providing a free, appropriate public education for all students who reside in Tiverton. So it breaks out that way, and from that, we determine where the best educational place is for them. I don't know if I'm getting at your question.
That's good enough, yeah, I know it's difficult on that level. Which kind of brings me to the next question, is the demographics you have here. Not really, in my mind, I don't think that we're really comparable to some of these towns. And the reason is the same reason that you have 15 not graduating, is because we have in this town some, for many years, a history of this problem. Maybe some of these other towns don't have that history. There are certain demographics here that still need to find out the value of education and, there's some negative attitudes in general. So, I think it may not be comparable maybe to like Bristol Warren. We have agricultural here. We have all kinds of different types of demographics that some of these towns don't have. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, the comparison is by no means precise. There are clearly things that are unique and different about Tiverton, that are unique and different about Bristol Warren and Middletown.
Which I agree is a challenge.
Including their tax base. But I'm just saying, if you want to compare us to a town or two towns, those are probably the most relevant comparators.
Okay, so I know that's difficult. It's a challenge that you have here. And that brings me to my comment on money and what teachers make. I noticed, like, for example, step one, the highest that you had there compared to ours is a difference of $5,624 per year, which I understand that's something, but it's not the world. You know what I'm saying? It's not. And the highest step was a difference at $7,420 a year, something like that. So, and let me just finish that comment. The whole picture is, my opinion, is that teaching. I understand that money's important, but when teaching, it's how you teach. How do you inspire that student? And so if your teachers are now inspiring the students, then the students will graduate, and then you'll get more money for the budget. It's kind of a reverse operation. So if starting from a premise of inspiring the teachers, and I actually know that the superintendent has some professional courses planned along those lines. So that is great. But I just want to kind of bring up that aspect of, you talk about the salaries, but there are other parts of it, so that, the teachers need to be able to teach math to different levels of students, and then maybe you wouldn't need the remedial math teacher. So I'm just bringing that up as a counterbalance to all the talk about money. So, yeah.
Ruth, if I may, the purpose of that slide wasn't to say that people are monetarily focused on their job or anything like that.
Right.
The purpose of those three slides was singularly to show you that the contract that was awarded to the staff was by no means exorbitant.
Okay.
And so when you talk about the revenue that the budget grew by, you have to recognize that it just put our teachers right in the realm there. Like, we're not overpaying anyone. The reality is they're still on the low end, but it's not about saying that our people want more money to do their job. That's not it at all. It's to show you, the budget committee, and the community that we're not overpaying. The contract is very fair.
Okay, thank you very much. That's all I have.
I think the only other point I needed to make was, a 22-year-old graduate from college burdened with a boatload of student loan debt, which is very typical today. A $5,000 beginning salary difference will make a difference, without a doubt. It would to me.
Right.
And we do have to, as we are trying to recruit new teachers, it's one of our biggest struggles.
No, I understand the value of that.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much.
I just want to understand the salary increase a little bit better. The promotional matrix, that's established by the state, at the state level?
It's contractual.
It's contractual. So when you say 3% raise, does that whole matrix go up 3%? And does also their salary, the annual salary, go up 3% too?
So there's two ways a salary would go up year on year. One is you get a salary increase for every year of you know,
Yeah.
for every year that you, up to year 10.
Right, right. Move up
And
the
then there
matrix.
are additional increases, which, or not additional increase, there's the contractual increase. So yes, I think what you're
Yeah.
surmising is correct.
Yeah, okay, so, right, so, on the annual salary, you get an increase, and it doesn't quite fit the matrix, so everyone goes to the next higher step. Is that
Not
correct?
everyone.
Not everyone?
Not
Only
everyone.
those teachers that are in.
All right, so everyone stays in the matrix, and the matrix moves up, and that's it.
No.
Yeah.
Everyone moves up in the matrix.
Yeah, they move up with the increase in
Yeah,
in
up
the
to
price.
year 10.
Up to year 10.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
where they top out, and they will only get increases.
No,
as
I'm
awarded.
talking about the negotiation for 3%. Where is the 3%? Where is that? Is it on their annual paycheck, or their month? I mean, primarily, fundamentally, where is it? Is it in that matrix?
So again, if you go from if you're a year 5 teacher and you go to being a year 6 teacher, you get an increase as a result of going from year 5 to year 6, and you get an increase as a result of the contract specifying a 3% annual
Yeah.
increase
Yeah.
for everybody.
Yeah, okay, all right, so you'll travel.
So basically, the year 6 salary is, higher compared to your 5-year salary, but it's also higher because there was a 3% increase.
Right, okay, I understand now, thanks. And also this slide, the student not graduating rate. I stumbled on a statistic that said nationally, it's like about almost 80% graduate, so we're beating the average. And it's demographics. Yeah, so, right, this
That's
is
a good way of looking at it, glass half full, but
But, yeah, there's got to be.
it's not aspirational.
Yeah, right. I don't know any of our cases here, so not a single one at any time through our history of any of the people that aren't graduating on time. So I'm just making this general observation that obviously there are some social problems that could be part of that, not just education. Although I guess you're making the case if a person was really hooked on education, they wouldn't get in trouble. I can see that, but I would rather see, this is almost like steering the car by looking at the fuel gauge almost. I'd rather see focus on the math and verbal proficiency scores at the end of their high school career as being a focus versus that. I think you have not a lot of control over that.
Sort of synonyms.
They don't have a lot of control.
What's that?
They sort of they're sort of synonyms, they go together. We do the first
Right,
part, you get the second
I can
part.
understand your reading program that starts at kindergarten and works up, we'll pay some of this toward the end. I'd also like to see STEM start at kindergarten and work its way up versus having some technology things at the senior year. It's already too late. I'm an engineer, so I know what I went through, and it was every year that I could remember. I
At
was
some
doing
point,
those
love to
things.
come back and do a curriculum presentation for you and show you the great work we're doing with STEM as early as kindergarten with some
Good.
coding and programming.
Excellent.
Mathematics, science, yeah, it's
Wonderful.
really great.
Okay, super, thank you.
I noticed on your budget, you want $500,000 from the town for capital improvements. Why can't you use your fund for that? You have in the past.
Yeah.
And it's liable to increase again.
So I'd call your attention up here to, one back. You see the fund balance historically over the last 5 fiscal years, and you see where we're predicted to end FY19 or basically start July 1st, the fiscal year 20 with under $1 million, in which, in parentheses there, I have a commitment The school committee's already made a commitment for 250,000, so now you're about, 700,000. You don't want to dip below that for the reasons being that anything that impacts the budget during the fiscal year, you need a place to turn to cover that, whether it's a special ed increase or a transportation increase or things like that. So, when the fund balance was very high, you could easily do that, and high credit to the school committee for doing that, investing in our ceiling tiles and our lighting and all that. But the fund balance now resides at a level that it's just prohibitive to keep funding it.
Okay. And I sort of heard this, and it's got nothing to do with this, but did I hear this right? If I'm a parent and I choose to send my child to a private school, the town has to fund their transportation?
Been like that for years.
And the online books.
It's by Rhode Island state law.
Personally, I find it ludicrous and insane, but that's just me.
Believe it or not, we save money.
How?
Because if so many kids go to private school, you don't have to hire teachers.
I can send my kid to St. George's, I can afford to give him a car.
Wow.
Come on. Yeah, I can understand it with the special needs and all that. And that's probably where most of it goes, but we're not going to change it because of the state we live in.
It's generally just parochial schools. It's generally parochials. It's not. It is
Parochial
not.
school?
It's the parochial schools.
Now you got me real annoyed.
It's it's Rhode Island state law. I don't necessarily agree with it either.
They've tried to change it, but it hasn't changed. It makes sense, that's why.
That's it for now.
So I think there's been a lot of banging on the budget, what you guys are requesting, but I would just like to say that you talked about STEM, and that was a hot topic, and my son's in the middle school. He's been a direct benefactor of that. He talks about coding, and he's excelling, and now he's not an athletic kid. Maybe he will be one day, but the only complaint I have is that I honestly would like to see more in STEM, and I'd like to see more in athletics. I know that you guys have done a very good job trying to be as conservative or fiscally conservative as you can, and I appreciate that. But that's really the only complaint I have, is that I just like to see more poured into those programs to bring in those students, to bring in those families that will drive Tiverton to that number that you guys are trying to achieve of 100% graduation. So I just want to say thank you.
And I want to assure you that the budget we're presenting to you tonight does exactly that. Principal Craven is here. She already has a robotics program planned for the middle school next year. Principal Ashley has a robotics program planned also with drone technology and underwater surveillance technology. So we've got some amazing courses, but I said this earlier, it's the investment that gets us there, right? If you invest in the schools, we'll deliver the results.
Now, granted, I have a stake in this claim. I have 4 kids in the system, so I understand that. And the disabilities that was brought up, the 300, does that include like speech therapy and things like that? So 3 of my kids have gone through that, and they're all wonderful now. So whoever's working that program, I just like to applaud them as well. So thank you.
Now you're gonna make me the bully.
Joe?
Bad guy.
Well, I'm just gonna say straight out, I'm not gonna support more than a 2% increase in your budget this year. I don't believe we need behavior specialists. I don't believe we need a lot of things that you're asking for, and I believe that you have more money in your fund balance than is stated on that line up there. So bottom line, I don't buy it.
Jeff, can I ask one last question?
Well, I think that we've got time, and we've got the school committee here, so what I want to do is, I want to take I certainly don't want to, release the meeting, so what I'd like to do is go, I'd like to go around again. I'd like to certainly use this time effectively, so I don't know that I necessarily want to go in order. Would you guys prefer to go in more, maybe we need to keep the order, I don't know.
Do you want to start since you ended last time? That would be fair.
I ended?
Do we want to do what?
Oh, no, Joe just went.
No, Joe just ended.
Joe ended.
Oh, you were middle.
Joe ended, yeah.
Well,
Joe ended, so, no, we'll just go around again. We'll just go around. We'll try to keep it moving, and we'll go ahead. We've got 20 minutes until 10, and I certainly don't want to, you know, I don't want to waste this time, so I'm not going to keep talking. Go ahead.
And ask online, because I thought we were going by slides, so.
Yeah, I know.
That's okay.
You know how it works.
Can we go back to the salary one? I have a question, because we're talking a lot about the contract and how that came about and how it was negotiated. Can you tell us the last time there was an increase in a contract? How many years have the teachers gone with no increase?
Over the last 15 years, I believe there were 6 years that there was 0% increase for the teachers. The contract prior to this one, so it was 2015, 2018, and Mrs. Black, correct me if I'm wrong here, was 2% in each of the 3 years.
That was the prior contract?
So the contract prior to the one we just negotiated. But, you know, going back to the early 2000s, I believe it was 6 years that there was a 0% increase for the teachers in the contract.
And the behavioral specialist that was going to be added, that was just brought up. Can you tell us what that person would do and why they're needed?
Yeah, it's, you know, it's become a critically needed position in our schools. We have more and more students being identified for emotional issues and behavioral issues, and that what this person does is work directly with those students, but also work directly with the teachers where the students are placed in their classrooms to give them the strategies and the skills to work with that student so they can remain in the regular classroom and get a high-quality education. So dual purpose, I would say to you that it's a common position in almost every middle school in the state, and it's desperately needed at Tiverton Middle School.
And do some of these children with the behavioral, it's my turn.
I didn't say a word. Calm down. I'm waiting.
All right, some of the children with the that would be benefited from the behavioral specialist, some of them also disabled.
You mean classified with a disability?
Yes.
Yes.
Where it's needed?
Where it's needed.
As part of their IEP or their disability?
Yeah, I just want to correct one of my answers. I believe it was 4 years, not 6 years, that they had 0%.
Thank you.
So I know we're all talking salary. The teachers pay a percentage of their health care cost? 20%. So that in those years that they increased by 2% or no percent, 0%, were their teachers actually taking home less money because their health care cost had risen and their salaries had leveled, or?
If they had healthcare costs that were, you know, exceeding, you know, the whatever they benefited from the 2%, then absolutely yes. If they had no healthcare costs and never went to a doctor, I don't recommend that, then, you know, it.
You don't recommend
then
that.
I don't recommend that. Then they, you know, may still not have incurred increased costs.
Okay. Okay. And just to go on to, and to be transparent, I have no children in the school system at that time. They're all college graduates, gainfully employed. Thank you very much to the teachers who helped them get there. But I still believe that we still need to support our schools. These are our kids, and we need to support that. On a personal note, I do have a daughter who is a behavioral specialist, works with children from preschool through high school, and she's only been in the field a few years, and the stories she tells of the changes in these children's lives in the classroom. She does a lot of education with the teachers to get kids on behavior programs and from their families. So they're seeing changes at home and in the schools. I mean, we're enriching their lives and their families' lives, so.
So I'd like to just follow on that. You know, the single most effective way to enrich any community is actually to improve the quality of its schools. And the single best way to improve the quality of the schools is to improve the quality of the teachers. And we have excellent teachers right now, but we're trying to get better. You don't need a building, you don't need a desk, you don't need a book, you don't need anything to have a school but a teacher and a student.
Tiverton teachers have patiently worked hard and not been supported in raising their salaries competitive to the communities around us. I'm concerned that if we don't make a step in the right direction, we're going to continue to have the lowest paid teachers in our community, our county, and that we're going to continue a kind of race to the bottom. I'm looking at a salary of $39,000 starting teacher in Tiverton and thinking about, okay, after taxes and paying what you owe back for having gone to college, paying back your loans, affording a car, all of your insurance. I wonder if a Tiverton teacher starting out can afford to live in Tiverton. And this is a year when we have the most. We could be like Lincoln, and we could start turning this around so that we're no longer losing our teachers. Teachers that have to go out of necessity to just pay their bills, and to raise the bar so that we become a town where teachers want to come to, instead of Tiverton is a wonderful community, but if you can't afford to live here and you look around and $5,000 is a lot of money. That's a lot of money when your base salary is $39,000. And I know it goes up, but can you even afford to start in Tiverton? I fully support the school committee's budget. Thank you.
The paper of record today had an article about some Medicaid funds of $1.9 million. Could you talk about sort of what your plans are, the understanding of how that money, will that be added to the fund balance? Too early to know? Kind of feel a bit of an elephant in the room.
It's too early to know, to answer the easiest question. So where did that money come from? Every year we have special education costs. Our special education program is largely run through the Newport County Special Education Program. Money can be applied for from Medicaid to reimburse some of those costs. Beginning in the 1990s was the practice of the school committee to leave reimbursements from Medicaid with Newport County Special Education Program.
What year was that?
Sort of in Tiverton's name.
What year?
In the 1990s. I don't have a precise year, but it was well over 20 years ago. So some of that money came from there, and some of that money came from reimbursements in the Race to the Top grants from during the Obama administration. The flux in special education over the course of years was covered by that at different points. So if we ran over budget, that money could be accessed. If we ran even and then got reimbursement, it stayed there.
Stayed in the fund.
Over the course of 20 years, you're talking something like $90,000 a year accrued to the budget, to the fund itself. So it's somewhere between 1.6 and 1.8, I believe, right now. It is not restricted. It can be used for capital improvements. If capital improvements are in our 5-year plan, a percentage of that money can come back to the town, depending on sort of some of the variables in the capital plan. That can be as high as 50%, or it may be around 35%. However, we're also looking at a significant shortfall in our special education budget for this year, so FY19.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I say it's too early to tell exactly how much of that money is accessible for anything other than covering what might be a pretty substantial special education shortfall in FY19.
Great. And I guess the second thing I'd like to welcome to thank you on the first kind of go around, and I really appreciate that you started the presentation when we met a few weeks ago with a vision for where we want to go and with goals. I mean, it's been hard for us to understand how we spend all our money here, and having an idea of having specific goals, having worked in other school districts and different states and stuff, appreciate that. And to me, looking at where we stand relative to other communities about what we pay to deliver that good education, you have to pay for it. As much as we don't want to, you need to do it. And I think that this budget captures that it's not frivolous spending by any means. There's contractual stuff that's in there, and it's for purpose to achieve the goals, which I greatly appreciate. And I think the value of homes, the value of this community, bringing in businesses, are predicated on really good schools. We'll get some people who don't care, who don't have kids, but pretty much most people will look at valuing the town, knowing that there's a quality education, and I believe the budget supports that. You can say no all you want, Ruth. There's lots of stuff I'll sit and shake my...
I'm not saying anything,
I can't believe a lot of your stuff, so... It's offending.
Okay.
I didn't say anything offensive. I did not say anything offensive. You chose to respond. I just nodded, but don't blow it out of proportion.
Kind of all over the place here, so I don't even know which way we were going with questions. Since we went to the, how many special education students do we have? I think on the original slide, you guys had said 11, and then, 11 more for this year, maybe, and now there's 13 more?
I'm not sure that was on a slide. That may have been just referring to out-of-district placements.
Okay,
We average about 15% of our total population is on an IEP.
14 to 15%.
Yeah, about 300 students.
Okay, about how many students?
About 300.
300, okay. Sorry, I knew it was around 200, but I was talking about additional students.
Maybe a little bit less than.
Yeah, sorry.
It's in that neighborhood.
And then, since everybody else is kind of making statements, I appreciate, my husband's a teacher, not in Tiverton. I don't have any children in Tiverton, but I do have grandchildren that are on IEPs. So I understand, that is needed. And I believe in education. I really do care about the schools. But I have questions about that, because to me, the people of the town elected me to look at the budget and scrutinize the numbers and try to do the best for the town. And so, so my question is that if, I don't know who is responsible for maintaining and tracking the school financial accounts. That is your job as the school committee and things like that. But I don't understand how the data and the accounting mechanism, took how a 1.6 million spending gap could occur and be overlooked at the end of the year budget reviews from last year or the year before. I realize that it's something that has been, to me, it had to have been overlooked somewhere, because you have audits and you have negotiations, things that have to be looked at the end of every year, right? So I just don't understand how that, unless I'm missing something, maybe that 1.6 million that was in the Medicare account was not overlooked at some point at the end of last year. Did you guys, was it overlooked?
The school committee was unaware of the size of the fund up until about 2 to 3 weeks ago.
Okay.
It is audited, but it is a separate audit from the audit that the town or the school department undergoes, and that had not been shared with us in the past.
Okay. And do we know if there are any other deficits? Any other deficits besides the one that you had up here? No? Sorry, this isn't something that I just had been trying to get out. I'm also concerned about the seniors and other people in the town, because a lot of the senior citizens aren't getting big pay raises, and even though we want, and Jennifer Ashley kind of touched on that, it's not a lot to give the teachers pay raises, but when the pay for seniors and other people in the town is also only going up by a small amount, and then the majority of that money's been being eaten up by Medicare and their health insurance and stuff, it's hard for them to come up with the extra money too. There are those of us in town that, we get that, we have to pay our taxes and we want to, support the schools. But there are also people in town that can't afford to take those extra, to pay all that extra money in the tax levy that has to go up. So that was my statement, and I'm done. And thank you guys. I really do appreciate the school, and I do care. So I am looking at this seriously, and I want to try to support the school, but I just also want to understand where everything's going. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, try to move through this. So I just want to, first of all, ask, a slide came up which showed the fund balance about $950,000 with an asterisk, and then there was a statement that about $200,000 was recently committed. Was that roughly, 200 some odd thousand was recently committed for something?
Literacy program.
Okay, so how did that commitment happen?
We voted on it.
A vote, okay, so by a vote of the school committee? Okay. So, my question is, is there another amount, or are there other amounts of money in that realm of monies from that, that we've been looking at for a few years now, that are committed by votes of the school committee? There are. And if I added all those up, those other commitments, would they or would they not be roughly $1 million?
I don't have that. I don't have the answer.
Okay.
Mrs. Palish did present that at the last meeting, and there was some discussion of amounts that could be uncommitted and that we very well may uncommit, but...
So how could you uncommit it, with a vote?
Yeah, so the fund balance, above a certain threshold, which is pretty small, I think it's $2,500. Any allocation or commitment of funds has to be by vote of the school committee. So every amount that's been taken from the fund balance to do the ceiling tiles, do the lights, and that's, why it went from 4 million to approximately $1 million, was by vote of the school committee, and it was largely, so three things have driven most of the drawdowns from the fund balance in the last 3 to 4 years. The renovation project at the middle school and high school, as well as other capital projects at the elementary schools. Security and something else, I can't remember, technology.
Okay.
Can I draw, I want to make sure I'm on the same page with you.
Mhm.
Are you drawing a corollary to the fund balance to the request for the increase in the budget?
No, I'm just asking questions about the fund balance and how there was a mention of it, 200,000, 250,000 being committed recently for a literacy program. I asked how, by vote?
That always has to be by a vote.
By a vote. And then I asked the question, are there other monies? The answer was yes, there are other monies that are committed. I asked the question, was it roughly on the order of $1 million? We weren't quite sure. I'll refrain the amount. There is other monies. We agreed to that. And then we all agree that we can take a vote of the school committee and uncommit that money, and we'll just leave it at that. I just want to clarify for the record that. That's just want to clarify those steps. Now, I just want to talk about another thing. I wasn't here at the last meeting, but I do remember the superintendent asking at one point, that to just trust in the system, and that, with this funding, that the good things are going to happen and things are going to improve. But I have to say that I am, I have trouble, especially this week, with that, because, and this is separate from the questions I submitted on 21 February, which are still unanswered, but separate from that. The amount of money requested originally was $1.25 million from taxes, roughly, from local. I think it was about 1.25 million, the original request from January was five.
no longer on the table.
Okay, but I'm just saying, at that point it was, okay? And it's now 938,000, I believe, right? Or right now, 4% number. What I guess what I would like to make the point, simply that the increase, the situation that has evolved this week, first, or in the recent weeks, is first of all, that there is a surplus in this Medicaid account, in this collaborative, whatever this Newport account, of 1.6 to 8 million, okay? And then, lo and behold, what I saw in the paper, that there's a I thought it was $7 million deficit due to about a dozen or so special needs students. And so with that, it very well could be the case that, the $1.6 to $8 million, it was not there. And should the taxpayers have voted for the $938,000 to fully fund the request of 4%, to do all the great things that the doctor has spoken about, okay? Lo and behold, there's a deficit of 1.6 million, and none of those things are going to happen because the 4% is going to have to go to plug the deficit. Now, we got lucky that there's going to be potentially 1.6 to 1.8 million to plug a deficit potentially. But the doctor asked at one point in that presentation, as I watched it on YouTube, to trust. And when numbers that big appear and then disappear in the matter of a week, and imagine, very easily, the latter number of the deficit could have appeared, and the former number may not have appeared. This appropriation might have gone in and been used to plug the deficit. And now, none of these great things that the doctor speaks of would have even happened. So I have a hard time, without even getting into the merits of my former submitted question, I have a really hard time with the word in this scenario, especially, and this is just going on the mechanics of reading the newspaper the last week. That just the way that the whipsaw of these large numbers and how it very easily could have been very different in terms of the taxpayers' money going, just instead of improving programs, it could have easily been used to plug a deficit. So just the whole thing is just it's just concerning. Thank you. Ruth?
Again, the 1.7 million deficit, how was that missed in the original planning? I'm just asking that question. I don't know if I've gotten that yet. I mean, I may have missed it. It was not in your original planning. It's a brief, it's okay, brief answer.
One thing we all have to recognize is that we have a brand-new superintendent this year. It's his first go-around at the budget. We've also been without a director of finance since mid-January. Fortunately, we have Mr. Crowley on board as an interim, but certainly we got off to a little bit of a rocky start with our budget season. And I am, for one, very grateful that we came. We have a newly formed finance subcommittee.
Yeah.
We've been working very hard, pouring through numbers, putting in far more hours than any community volunteer. Let's face it, $1,200 a year to stipend makes me a volunteer. We've put in an unbelievable amount of numbers going through, hours going through numbers. I think also we're grateful that we found it now and not next week, truthfully. I'm going to be honest with you. We've poured through these numbers. They're real. They are most definitely largely as a result of a number of students that were sent out last year to alternate locations for special needs.
Okay.
And most certainly deservedly. I don't know what else to tell you.
That's good, really, that's good. I got a lot from that. And it just is so, there, I can see a lot of what you're dealing with. What I see is, with this behavioral issue, you've got to be almost like parents, almost, and I don't agree with that happening. And again, I'm getting into this whole value system thing where, the whole country, the value system is becoming weaker, so now the schools have to be the parents instead of the families staying intact enough to be more parents. You know what I mean? It's the burden is falling on you in a way. You have to hire a behavioral person to help these children who don't have it in some other ways. A lot of good parents. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that they don't have time, or whatever the issue is with the family. They're not always intact, et cetera.
And we're far from the only community facing this.
No, I know.
Locally.
I know. So I wanted to let you know that we all understand some of those things and that we all really value education, no matter how we talk about the budget. Yeah, go ahead.
So, and just to sort of add on to what Diane was saying, the most difficult thing for us to be able to budget is special education because there is so much flux, which is why the decision of a school committee 20 years ago to leave that money there was probably the correct one. And was, again, going back to our meeting with our legislative delegation, one of the things that the state urgently needs is a uniform funding mechanism across the state for special education, because you can have, literally a family move in with $500,000 worth of IEPs that the community is now liable for, and those children deserve those services, but it's up to us to find a way to pay for it.
And so that brings up what happens next year if the same thing happens and 5 more people move in with that need. It's difficult, I understand. I mean, okay, that's, I think, enough. The only thing is since I'm sympathetic with you on this special needs issue with the 300 students, I do kind of want to know who makes the decision. Is it a teacher that makes the decision?
No, it's a team decision.
Team, okay, that's good. I don't need to know any more details than I should now, but taking up time. But I did want to mention to Jen that the teacher doesn't have to live in Tiverton, just so you know. They don't have to live in the town. In fact, I know so many teachers who live in one town and work in the neighboring town, that type of thing happen. It does go on. To Brendan, I would say that, yeah, the schools are very important to the town, but taxes also, because what happened here is we raised the taxes, and then people with children didn't move here. You know what I mean? So that was history that you don't, in the past. So we are playing a bit of catch up. So even though we love education, please understand that our whole town is playing a bit of catch up that is going on. We doubled the budget in 10 so years. Whether we saw double results, we're not sure. We have rankings that we look at, all kinds of things. Okay, so please have some understanding on what we're dealing with, especially also what Sherry said, that we are tasked with the people of Tiverton, that they can only pay so much, and there's a certain percentage of fixed income people in this town, which is why I'm questioning the demographics comparisons, et cetera. And I think you have something to say on that in a minute. I think that was all. I definitely, to your point, bringing in families is great, but we can't push out families either that are needed to be dealt with what they're trying to deal with. So, it's great to bring them in, but there's still some of the same issues that they're facing. I think that was it. Thank you very much for letting me let you know how I feel about it. Thank you.
Tom?
Yes, I want to thank everybody sitting there and who's helped us understand things better. The tours of all the schools was fabulous. I really enjoyed it. We have a great facilities. Super impressed, and the shape of them, the quality and the shape of them, really good. I think you did a great job here with the budget proposal. Tough decisions have to be made on this side, but you did a great job. So thank you very much. Much appreciated. Ruth, I'm a politician, I guess, because I went out and shook hands and got elected. I never thought that would happen.
I don't think any of us did.
Ruth, I know. Ruth made me actually talk to people, and I'm an engineer, and I was horrified at that prospect. But I did get a sense of what people were thinking, and I'm trying to put it in numbers like a nerdy engineer as to what I felt. I have something to show you here. Just it's late, and these are numbers, so I understand how that is. But I think it's interesting. I wanted to see, you know, we're all taxed by what we own, and not on what we earn. So I wanted to see,
You gotta plug in?
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
So this goes along with what Sherry was talking about. Too bad I didn't coordinate that with her.
Yeah, what he's doing.
No, this is really, I'm going rogue here. So,
Now you have to turn around.
so numbers, but here, first column is medium household income. I put that in order of the towns with the towns. So Barrington obviously is the number one. But then we have a number of households. So what I did is I multiplied those two numbers, and you get a number that represents how much earnings is coming into a town. Right? The total number of earnings of what's coming into a town. So that's the revenue basis, what I call it. So, and what I did is I just divided each community's school budget into that to get a ratio. Right, so let's take a look at Portsmouth. You can multiply their school budget times 40 times, and you get what people are earning. So it's sort of, I mean, it's just all relative stuff. There's no absolute. So when you do that ratio, you can see that you know, Portsmouth can much more easily afford their school budget. Just, I mean, it's a generalization, of course. Yeah, and I know you have other things too. But to me, it sort of kind of makes sense.
It does.
With the
Tom, the only thing with Little Compton is Little Compton doesn't have a high school.
right, and they still have a low ratio. Low is bad.
Right.
So you would think they would have a better one, but they don't.
But because they go into the Portsmouth one.
They have to pay.
They
go to Portsmouth, so.
That would be part of their budget, though. That would be part of the school budget, whatever they pay.
But Newport's, so I appreciate this, and I kind of understand the attractiveness of it, but I think on inspection, you have to say, Newport is not the least stressed place, and yet by your calculation, it is. And
because they have a lot of households.
yeah, but I'm just sort of saying, you know, I don't think the formula is valid. I apologize for saying that, but and Little Compton, on the other hand, looks terribly stressed, as does Barrington, and yet we sort of know intuitively that those towns aren't. And Little Compton has a huge number of second homes, and so their tax rate's pretty low. So I'm just sort of saying, I kind of get where you're getting, I understand where you're trying to get at, but I'm not sure that you're, you know, the math may be right, but I don't think the formula is.
No, you can't argue with the numbers.
I think that
has to be
just
relative to the
broadly,
tax rate.
though, it's sort of is.
Actually, Barrington is extremely stressed. There are many people who've had to leave Barrington to go to Massachusetts. People I've worked with and so forth. I'm just saying, they had huge tax arguments there, you know, so I'm just saying, I don't know if you can argue with the numbers. It's not the whole picture, but.
Hey, Tom, how do you count in the new gaming casino revenue?
Yeah. That's why I don't think you can.
No, I didn't count that as
So I just have a question, because I'm having a hard time understanding this too.
It's
So
a true
when you look at
engineer's
Newport-
attempt. I
Yes.
recognize that. I could sort of tell at 50 paces, so.
Newport would be
But
similar
I'm not
with
sure your
summer
formula's
homes
right.
and seasonal rent and seasonal properties that would not have students on the, and also too, to take in the other side of that with community housing and lower income in Newport offsets that because they have every housing community almost on the island. Middletown only has one, and I don't believe Portsmouth has any. They may have Section 8, but they don't have public housing. So that makes Newport totally off-skewed, because you could have a $16 million home, or you can have 5 housing districts, which typically the housing districts are going to feed off of the system, the public school system. So I think you have to, I appreciate the work that you've done, and I get it, but I think there's so many things that plug into that makes it, when you.
I don't think it's totally irrelevant, but
No, I don't think it's totally irrelevant, but I think there's other factors that, and Jamestown would be another one with seasonal homes.
I think though, looking at column D and column E, I mean, up to that point, and I'm not drawing the same conclusions. I just haven't been able to digest column F yet. But looking at column D and column E, it's certainly, I think there's a lot you can do with column D and column E, and there are a lot of conclusions or observations certainly that can be drawn from column D and column E, and I'll be happy to have a coffee over that.
I think you also have to look at the number of students that are in it to figure out where the school budget is, because if we're talking about 1,800 students, how many students are currently in the Newport School District with a $40 million budget? How many students are they serving with that?
They have stats on per student.
I have that over there, but I don't want to get into it.
That was in the package, though.
Yeah, we'll pass on that,
The per student cost was something that the school
Thank you,
committee
Tom.
did.
Thanks, Tom.
I want some credit for recruiting Tom too.
Thank you for doing that, Tom.
So where were we? We're up to J. Oh, Tom, are you done, Tom? Tom, do you have any other comments at the moment? Thank you, Jay.
Other than thanks.
All right. I will make one comment about this. Our taxes for the town are not based on what we make, but where we live.
Thank you.
The
It's on the
value of
property.
our house. Now, one big difference between us and the other towns that everybody likes to compare us to is we rely on single-family houses for our taxes. Almost exclusively, with the exception of the casino, the power plant, and cell phone towers. Everything else is us. Go to Middletown, what's the first thing you see? You're surrounded by business. Newport, Portsmouth, their taxes are diluted by business. Ours are not, and they never will be until the voters decide that they don't want to live in a rural town, and up until now, we have decided that's not going to be the case. So in the near future, we have to pay for it. That being said, yes, education is great. We want it. However, as long as it's single families paying for it, if you're paying $500 a month for taxes, $700, $800, $1,000, pretty soon you're going to get taxed out of here. If you're on Medicare or Medicare, you don't get a 3-4% increase every year. You're lucky to get one, and then Medicare takes it. Medicaid. I meant Social Security. Okay. So we have a lot of older people in this town, and we are getting older as time goes on. I remember years ago, I sat in one town council meeting, and this sort of thing was brought up, and one wag stood up and said, well, you could always sell and move. Where the hell are you going to go? You're here. You should be able to stay here. We should not tax people out of town. Now, the other big bear in the room, which has only been addressed peripherally, is this Medicaid reimbursement. Now, one person here has said, we just found out about this. My best information is that the board that has been controlling this fund is, the people that are on the board are school superintendents.
Correct.
So, Dr. Sanchioni, did you know about this?
I became aware of it when I became a superintendent here, yep. I would say October, November.
And you've previously not been in the school system?
No.
When did the school department find out?
About 3 weeks ago.
Okay. My best information
Well,
is...
so let me actually correct that. We found out how large the balance was.
I don't mean how large, that it exists.
That it exists. I don't know that I personally knew that it exists.
Okay.
Existed, so.
My other best information is that this group provides an annual report to each member, which is Tiverton, Little Compton, and it's either Portsmouth or Middletown. Who does that report go to?
It did not get received by the school committee. It goes to the superintendent.
Well, there has to be somebody in town that knew about it, and we need to find out who that is.
The only person I can surmise knew about it was the previous superintendent and the previous business manager.
Well, I have my own opinions about the previous superintendent. This kind of thing happened last year when the auditor came in here and dumped a bombshell about the fund balance, which pretty much nobody knew about. Now, I'm not saying anybody was hiding it, it just was not public knowledge. Now we have this again, something else that was not public knowledge. I'm not saying it's being hidden, I'm just saying it isn't transparent.
It's
Now, I
only public knowledge
understand.
now because of the disclosure of the school committee.
Well, I understand that it is not considered revenue until it is drawn down. However, I do believe that this report should be made public, that the voters should know what the money is there. We should have an opportunity to vote where that money will be used and when. Not,
Legally, yep, so legally, the last is not possible because it's been allocated for education.
I'm not saying, no. Yes, used for education, but to help reduce what we pay for your budget. And right now, we had no clue. All of a sudden, we're told there's $1.8 million in the closet. Now, you may not have known about it. It doesn't matter. Now it's out there. We all know.
Yep.
Going forward, I think the voters at the FTR should have some say in how, when, and where this is used. Obviously, it's going to be used for the school. I have no problem with that. You said that it is not restricted. It can be used for anything within the school. That's great. But we should know that it's there, and we should have some say about it.
When does that money get calculated? Like, is it from 2017 and then not calculated until, like, what fiscal year is it found?
Yeah, so it
from
would,
and then
so
comes into-
within the region, it would be known at the closing of their books, which would be June 30th or shortly thereafter. So that's when the fiscal year ends. The important thing among many important things to know is that it is something that's accumulated since 1996. So it's 23 years. So incrementally every year, the average accrual is not that great. I mean, it's a lot of money to me, but in terms of the entire budget or the entire fund, it's only a certain amount every year. With regard to allowing the voters to have a say in it, that's what all this dialogue is about. How you could actually structure like a ballot question or how you could even make that binding is probably not legal because it has been allocated. So technically, I don't believe even if you had a ballot question. So say you said, we're going to put before the voters, use $1 million of that to offset taxes. It wouldn't be legally binding.
Well, I wouldn't say you would do it that way.
But I'm just sort of getting at is how you would actually structure that. The only way you can actually return the money directly to the town is if it's used for capital that gets reimbursed from RIDE.
Well, I'm not even saying that we should get it. Here's what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
You come in and you say, we need $30 million for the school.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We say, okay, but you have $1.8 million in your pocket. We can do that, can we not?
Yep.
Okay. Now, let me ask you another question. When was the last time we drew down money from this account?
So I'm going to let Ms. Farnworth, who's on our...
Okay. Part of that question then is, when you did that, it become income.
Yes.
Was it ever in any report as such and where it came from?
It is noted in our annual audit. It is in the town's audit.
What is it called?
to.
The specific language, I don't know, but
See,
in
if it
fiscal
had
18,
said it was coming from a from this group,
it may have, I don't have the audit with me to read it.
okay, but that's the kind of thing that would have, there's a lot of people that pay close attention to these things, and they would have said, oh, what's
Yeah,
this?
there is a line item in the audit that shows that it's a Medicaid, and maybe they didn't use that term.
In fiscal 18, we took a drawdown of 200,000. Fiscal 17, 300,000. What I'm proposing at our next school committee meeting is that we establish a policy that, going forward, all monies minus any required holdback, which there is a required holdback by Newport County, be returned to the district against special ed costs each year. Plain and simple.
So just restrict it to,
That we will not allow this to grow going forward.
okay.
The other,
And this year, to offset our increase in cost, it will be drawn down.
the other thing is that if you use that money for operations, you're creating a structural deficit. That's, I mean.
If I could interject, I worked in Portsmouth when they were part of the collaborative. I've worked in Middletown, and they're definitely part of the collaborative. The other districts essentially use this as a contingency fund. And it's a good thing that it's there, because if it wasn't there, with what has happened this year in terms of the increased special education costs, we would not have had the money to cover those totally unexpected, out-of-district placement costs doubled in a single year. And much of that started as of the beginning of, like, July 1st, but a considerable number of kids. So if that contingency was not there, we would have had a huge deficit. And there was just no foretelling that happens. So that the fact that you have some money sitting there as a contingency, in case anything such as this happens, is a good, sound business practice.
Okay. Well, I've taken enough of your time.
Dustin?
Just to lighten the mood a little bit, so 1.8 million, 1.7 million, whatever. You kind of heard like where I'm coming from with STEM, with athletics, and then with my kids going through special education and stuff. So it's kind of a no-brainer to me. Yeah, contingency for special education, but 500,000 will build a hell of a football field, and 500,000 will build a hell of a planetarium to support STEM. No, I'm just kidding. But that money should and really could and should be used to currently support our kids, and even to help lower the budget if that's needed. But the money's there. It's found now, and we should use it as such. So.
Joe? Thank you, Jesse.
Can you tell me how many school counselors we currently employ?
One. Well, it's an office of two attorneys, but we rely on one of them.
No, I don't mean attorneys, I mean guidance
Oh,
counselors.
counselors, I'm sorry.
Is it 7?
7,
In that ballpark.
I don't think we have that many.
So we have them at all the schools, though.
Right.
They're part-time in the elementary
Some of them are
schools.
shared.
All right, so we have school counselors, we have a officer, the school resource officer. And how many nurses do we have now currently?
one per school.
So 1 per school. So each one of those people, particularly I remember when the school resource officer was hired, it was to help with the troubled kids, to get those kids over the edge. And what do the school counselors do if they're not counseling our kids?
They are.
So why do we need an additional person who's supposedly so smarter than all of our counselors that's going to push these kids through the... I hate to belittle that point. I know it's only one employee, it's a small portion. But it just seems to me that we've got so much damn staff now that, and that are there to support the kids. Plus all the teachers that don't even teach in the classroom, that work around the teachers, just, get the teachers to be better. When I went to school, we had probably 2/3 of the staff that's there now. And I think that the scores were higher. So, I'm not believing that just throwing more money at the problem is going to solve it. It seems to me all these counselors aren't doing their job. That's just my personal opinion. That's the way I'm looking at it as a layman. And I realize I can't tell you how to run the schools. I only have one vote, and that's the bottom line number. I just have to tell you, you're not convincing me. Can you just tell me how much a top step teacher makes now?
I was on there. That was,
No, I didn't see the top step. I only saw the bottom step. We showed how little we paid first. All right, so, I'm sorry, I didn't bring that back with me. I just want it to be public record, how much we pay. And I think what, the majority of our teachers are either top step or close to the top step, correct?
Large portion.
So that's $80,645 a year.
correct.
Does that include health care benefit? No. So that's basically what they take home, less taxes and copay. So on top of that,
It's not less taxes, no. That's the salary.
It's a gross salary.
that's their gross salary.
Gross.
All right. And then we're also paying their benefits, which is
portion.
health care.
A portion.
Yeah, well, I know they chip in at 20%. So we're paying 80% of their benefits. We're paying into their retirement fund, which that cost goes up. So, I just want that to be on record, because we talked about how little we're paying for. How long do they stay at First Step? 2 years?
1 year.
1 year, and then they're getting a pay raise and an increase if we have an annual increase. So, I think it's kind of, they come in and say, oh, these poor teachers are going to leave us, because my sister taught in Newport, right, for 3 years and got the hell out of there because she couldn't deal with Newport and went out into Mass, right? And, I mean, a lot of teachers don't want to teach in big cities. You may say, we'll make more money in Providence, but you got to realize what you're dealing with versus Tiverton. This sleepy little town, so I don't know. The information that's coming out, I don't know. I said enough. We need to go home.
I'm gonna recognize Sally. Do you have something to say?
Yeah, just
I'm gonna
very-
recognize Sally.
very
She's on the
quickly,
school
yeah.
committee. I'm gonna recognize a member of the public. Go
Thank
ahead.
you. Thank you.
And
So,
we're gonna close it up here.
one thing we haven't brought up is how we consolidate services, because we're so small, for economies of scale. If we go out for something ourselves, forget it. So since 2004, when Denise was there, these are all the collaborative efforts we do with Newport County, with all the different things, East Bay business managers, all those people get together for electricity and for gas and for oil and everything else. It brings the prices down. That's a good thing. Here's my chart on the teachers. It's not my chart, it was made. There's what we're talking about, and that's the inflation, CPI, and all those things. You can see what happened to it, because you asked that question before, how long ago? And the other thing, I'd like to thank all of you, because I've been coming to the Budget Committee since 2003, and I know you have to think of the whole town, the taxpayers, police and fire, and when I hear a harbor master doesn't have motors on his boat, and I hear all these things, and so I come because I want to look at the whole town. I don't want to come just as a school committee member and say, we need this, we need that. That's not what we've ever done. I am a special needs educator from Massachusetts. And I can tell you that when the city council came through Durfee High School to look at all the classes, what they're looking at, guess what? Kids to teachers. They're looking at numbers, money. They come into my class, 2 teachers, 12 kids. They were furious. They said to the business manager, close this down. This is not acceptable. And they said to him, come over here. And they showed him that every single student in there would have been an out-of-district placement, possibly 24-hour residential. They showed him how much it would have cost, Fuller Hospital, Bradley, wherever they were going. They said, oh my God, I hope they never retire. We retired. This has never happened in Massachusetts. Both of us retired, and they begged us to stay for 1 more year so they could figure out what they were going to do. So that's a true story. And just remember, we're only a fever, a car accident, or a mental illness away from having one of these precious children that need these. The first thing we ask isn't what's it going to cost. We say, are we providing everything that these kids need with the IEP? You asked about that. It's a whole group. It's parents, counselors, everybody else that gets together to see who goes in there. It's a very hard decision because we want to keep them in the schools. It's called RTI, Response to Intervention. We put that in the schools to make sure someone wasn't getting placed outside that didn't need it, because that's heartbreaking. I had a young boy go to Florida because he was lead poisoned, and at the airport they couldn't. So anyway, you don't need those stories. But what you need to hear is We try very hard to educate. 93% was our graduation rate. I want you all to know that a few years ago. It hasn't always been this. So now we have to find out why, provide career pathways, as you say. The other question you asked is about the school buses. The rule is, the state law is, if there's an emergency, a snow day or some other threat, every single student has to have a seat to get home. You can't say, Johnny, you have to stay because your mother dropped you off. You have no seat. Many people ask me that, even at the polls. That's the question with that. As far as the unfunded mandates go, years ago when they put them in, this is what they said. You send us a bill. You itemize everything we're voted on. Send us the bill and we'll give you the money. And guess what? We itemized them. It was $350,000 early on, not counting the bus. Don't forget, they put it the year after the buses went in. That would have been, because every district's different. And we sent them the bill every year, and they've never sent us a penny back. And so that's what you all talk about. I know, Ruth, you wanted to know about that. So we have a list of those. I think it's one of the only districts that have that itemized list of unfunded mandates. So thank you very much. I know you've got a tough, tough decision, but with our new beginnings here, like you said, a new superintendent and new staff and everything, we could do very exciting things. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sally.
Yeah, thank you, Sally.
I'm going to recognize a member of the public who happens to be a member of the council, Nancy Driggs.
Nancy Driggs. I am a member of the town council, but I'm here as a member of the public. And I just wanted to pick up, I maybe didn't understand completely Jay Edwards' question when you first found out about it. And it sounded like it was just discovered, but then I think I heard Diane Farnsworth say that there was a drawdown in 17 and a drawdown in 18. And it was a line item on the budget, so obviously...
No, it wasn't a line item on the budget, it was noted in the audit.
In the audit, that's what I meant, in the audit. But, so then you knew about it at least in 17, I would guess.
I was, personally, I
No.
was not aware. And you have to remember,
Somebody.
I'm still in my first term.
But-
Learning a lot as I go.
Somebody knew about it, and I guess it can be discovered in the audit, but you don't know the name of the line item. That's the question.
I could stay for a while.
We can.
Well, we'll find it.
I think what's noteworthy is that was said, and it's somewhere in that audit, yeah.
It is in
Okay.
the audit, and
Okay.
the fact of the matter is, none of us is, well, one of us is a CPA, probably in the audit, but I don't know how well good you are at reading the audits, but they're...
We're getting better, and we have someone who's very good at it, so, anyway,
Okay,
thank you.
so, thank you. Thank you, Nancy. So I just have one observation, and I thought of this earlier today. I just want to say it, and I don't mean to speak twice, but I just want to say one thing that it's a concern of mine, is that we have an increase in the salaries, or we got an increase, this increase from the salary thing, and we got another 3.5 coming next year, and now we've got 1.6 or 7 or whatever the newspaper said million in special needs increase too. I mean, that's a $3 million increase coming next year if you add those numbers together, or whatever the number is, 2 million, 3 million. It's a big number when you add the fact that we've got this special needs thing in town now, and July's going to 1st is going to come and go, and now we've also got the increase in salary. So this came to me at some point in my day today, and I forget when. So I just want to make that comment. I don't want to lose track of it because obviously I already did. So just the culmination of these two things are an issue moving forward. So I want to...
Jeff, just to respond to that, you're absolutely right, and we are still trying to deal with that.
Yeah, I mean, this is a real problem, and especially when it gets down to maintenance of effort, it's a real problem. So, okay, I want to close this out with the school committee. First of all, before I do the thank yous and all that, but I'd like to first of all, if we have more, I have a feeling that before we're done deliberating and whatnot, we're going to have probably more questions or whatnot. So I guess the first question I have, and we're of course starting to press time as well. So I guess the question I have of the committee / of my committee is, do we feel as though we're going to have more questions of the school committee? Do we want to see if we have them first before we and decide how we're gonna ask them when they come up. Does that make sense, or?
Yeah, yes, and I would like also, this gives an opportunity for the public to hear this hearing online, and so we can, I often hear from people after we've had meetings, so I would like to have some time.
Okay. Agree, or?
Yeah, I think what we should do is amongst ourselves.
Have a
develop-
session?
Develop a list.
Of questions, okay.
Instead of each one of us doing.
Okay,
ourselves.
be more efficient second
So,
time.
you know,
Yeah,
Have
yeah.
a list of like 10 or 15 bullets.
Try to consolidate them a
We
bit.
agree on what they're
Okay.
gonna be, they come.
Okay,
they
all right,
And-
very good. So
I'd just like
we
to
may
say
be
on
in touch
behalf
in
of
that
the school
regard.
committee, we are always willing, and I'll even say, happy to come back.
Okay, so that being said, you just heard that, so you know where we're at. And I had no idea where we're at till then.
You want to
So,
say it again?
Happy.
with that, I want to extend our thanks to the school committee and to the new superintendent and business manager for coming tonight, and thank you very much. And I think we had a productive session. Thank you very much.
I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn the school committee.
I'll
Is there a
make a
mo-
motion, Sally will second it.
All right, all those in favor?
Don't fight over
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And I will now ask for a motion to take the agenda item 8 and 9 and move it to the, and move them to the next week's agenda, to the next meeting agenda.
I'll make it.
I'll second it.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, I just want to speak quickly about number 10. We decided earlier, administrative items, discussion of future meetings. The next meeting is Tuesday. We're going to meet at 6:30. The first thing we're going to discuss is the, Chris Romline is going to come, and we're going to talk about the capital stuff with the playgrounds and the recreation. And then we're going to have, what do you call those? Pre-forma votes, preliminary votes. Because not everyone's going to be here. We have preliminary votes, and I have got to get that agenda posted by tomorrow, and that'll be that. I'm also going to build in some time to talk about the levy, and that's something that Tom and I will work on, and maybe Brendan can check our work over the weekend if possible. Thank you, Brendan. And that being said, I've also got to be on the ball on, to get the Thursday agenda posted as well. I'm going to be out of town till Tuesday at about 4 o'clock, that's why I'm saying that. Okay, though my closing remarks are virtually none, I will entertain them, oh, sorry?
Chris Romline just texted that he's only available Wednesday or Thursday.
Well, I don't know what to say.
Can we submit the questions and maybe go back to 7 o'clock and
All right,
just...
so let's do that, let's just,
I'll wait for an email.
I'm just tired of the Capitol. Let's just do that, we're gonna submit, if everyone could, let's do it this way, we'll, people in TV land, let's.
Hey, guys, we're still in session, so if we could
Quit.
keep the talking down just a little bit so we can wrap up, we'd appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, Jen. So let's do this then. If he cannot meet, if everyone could think of, if they have questions for Chris and the Recreation Capital, kindly bring them in writing or email them to the secretary if you have them, okay? And we will try to cut and paste them into a consolidated list, and we will get them to him in writing, and we will start the meeting at 7 like we usually do. How's that? Okay? And we'll just have to do it that way because I don't know what else to do.
So it's
Okay?
7 instead of 6:30.
Yeah, let's just do 7. If you can't make it, let's do 7. But try to, if you are one of these people with questions, kindly, get them in writing, get it in writing, get them in writing, and we'll try to consolidate them down. Sherry will consolidate them down, and we'll try to.
Hey, Ruth volunteered
just
to
make
do that
progress.
before. Now it's my job.
Okay, whatever. Well, someone will do it. Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Yeah, I'd like to make that motion.
I'll second it.
Thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.